My dad said it's too risky. When I asked for $65,000 to start my tech company, then he took a $625,000 loan for Joseph's BMW and failed dreams. Now he wants me to sell my home to save them? I kicked them off my doorstep and now. I 34. Male-in for most of my life, I believed that hard work and persistence would eventually earn me the respect and support I craved from my family. I was wrong. Dead wrong. But that mistake led me to build something they never could have imagined. And when they came crawling back with their hands out, I had only 4 words for them. Get off my property. This story starts with 2 brothers and parents who somehow convinced themselves that love was a finite resource that could only be given to one child at a time. I'm the older brother by 3 years. Joseph is 31, and from the moment he could walk, he was the center of our family's universe. Not because he was particularly talented, but because he had this uncanny ability to make everything about himself while playing the victim when things didn't go his way. Growing up, I was the responsible one. Homework done without being asked, room clean, chores completed. Joseph was the charmer who'd flash that crooked smile, and suddenly everyone forgot he'd just broken something or failed another test. My parents, Robert and Linda, ran a mid-sized accounting firm. They weren't wealthy, but they were comfortable. The favoritism wasn't subtle. When I was 12 and my computer science teacher recommended a $600 summer coding camp, my father said it was too expensive. But when 11-year-old Joseph decided he wanted horseback riding lessons at $150 per session, my parents somehow found room in that same budget for a full semester, complete with gear and boots. At 16, I wanted to take advanced computer science classes for $800 a year. Too expensive, they said. But when 15-year-old Joseph decided he wanted to join an elite travel baseball team costing $8,000 a season, my parents found the money. They even bought him a $1,200 bat. Finn, honey, you're already so good with computers. You don't really need formal classes, my mother explained with that patient smile I'd learned to hate. But Joseph's coach says he has real potential. This could lead to scholarships, maybe even a professional career. Joseph's real potential lasted exactly 1 season before he quit after getting benched for missing practices. Total cost, over $12,000. My computer science program, still too expensive. When I graduated high school with a 3.9 GPA and a partial scholarship to State University, my celebration dinner at Olive Garden lasted 30 minutes before the conversation shifted to Joseph's difficult transition period, which was mostly skipping classes and getting caught smoking weed behind the gym. My parents launched into their rescue plan, an $80 per hour tutor 3 times a week, reduced chores, easier course load, maybe private school if his grades didn't improve. What about Finn? My uncle asked. What's the plan for college funding? The uncomfortable silence said everything. Finn is so independent, my mother finally said. He's already gotten that partial scholarship, and he's been working part-time. He'll be fine, and that was that. My graduation dinner became a family planning session for Joseph's academic rescue mission, while I sat there wondering what I'd have to do to get even a fraction of their attention. I learned that day that being the responsible one just meant being taken for granted, but it also taught me something else. If I wanted success, respect, or security, I'd have to build it myself. And I did. I put myself through college, worked 25 hours a week at the campus IT help desk, took out student loans for the rest. Joseph got a full ride from our parents, who suddenly had plenty of money for tuition, room and board, a meal plan, and a brand new Jeep Wrangler for his 18th birthday. The excuse was always the same. Finn, you're so independent. You've always been able to figure things out on your own. Joseph needs more guidance, more support. What they really meant was that I was convenient to ignore, and Joseph was exhausting to deal with. So they chose the path of least resistance. The Jeep was the last straw for me. I'd been driving a 1998 Honda Civic with 200,000 miles on it and a broken air conditioning system. I'd saved up $3,000 working summers and weekends to buy a decent used car, something that wouldn't break down in the middle of my commute to campus. When I mentioned this to my parents, my father suggested I keep driving the Honda until it completely died. 2 weeks later, Joseph came home from his graduation party driving a brand new Jeep Wrangler. Bright red, lifted suspension, premium sound system. My mother was practically in tears, talking about how proud she was that they could give him such a nice graduation gift. It's important for Joseph to have reliable transportation, she explained to me later, when I asked how they could afford a $35,000 vehicle after telling me I should drive my dying Honda until it literally stopped running. What about my transportation? I asked. Your Honda still runs, doesn't it? That was the moment I realized I was never going to be their priority. Not when I was 12 and wanted to learn coding. Not when I was 16 and wanted advanced classes. Not when I graduated with honors. Not ever. After college, I landed a job at a small software company in Austin called TechFlow Solutions. The pay was decent for an entry-level position, $52,000 a year, and the work was challenging. More importantly, I was good at it. Really good. Within 6 months, I was debugging code that had stumped developers with 5 years more experience. Within 2 years, I was leading development projects. Within 4 years, I was managing a team of 12 developers and pulling down $85,000 annually. I was learning everything I could about the business side of tech, staying late to sit in on sales calls, reading every book I could find about startups and venture capital. I subscribed to TechCrunch, Wired, and Harvard Business Review. I attended local entrepreneur meetups on weekends and networking events after work. I was obsessed with understanding not just how to build software, but how to build software businesses. Joseph, meanwhile, had dropped out of college after 3 years and 6 different majors. He'd started with business administration, switched to communications, tried marketing, dabbled in sports management, flirted with psychology, and finally landed on general studies before giving up entirely. He'd moved back home and was working part-time at a friend's father's car dealership while talking about his big plans. The plans changed every few months, but the pattern stayed the same. Big dreams, zero follow-through, and constant financial support from our parents. First, he was going to start a luxury car rental business. Then he was going to get into cryptocurrency mining. Then he wanted to become a social media influencer. Then he discovered day trading. Then it was real estate flipping. Then back to luxury car rentals. But with a twist. This time, he'd also offer chauffeur services. Each new idea was presented to our parents with the enthusiasm of someone who just discovered fire. Joseph would create elaborate PowerPoint presentations, print out articles from Entrepreneur magazine, and talk for hours about market opportunities and projected profits. And every time, without fail, my parents would nod along like he was pitching the next Amazon. I watched this cycle repeat for years, sitting at Sunday dinners while Joseph explained his latest scheme, and my parents hung on every word. When he talked about crypto mining, my father actually researched graphics cards to help him build a rig. When he mentioned day trading, my mother opened a joint investment account with him. When he pivoted to real estate, they started driving around with him to look at potential flip properties. None of it ever went anywhere. The crypto rig mined exactly 0 coins before Joseph got bored and sold the components. The day trading account lost $8,000 in 6 months. The real estate venture never got past the window shopping phase. But somehow, Joseph's failures were always reframed as learning experiences, while my successes were treated as expected outcomes that required no celebration or acknowledgement. By the time I was 28, I'd saved $35,000 and had identified a gap in the market that I was uniquely positioned to fill. During my 4 years at TechFlow, I'd worked on projects for dozens of different industries, but construction companies were consistently the most frustrated with their software options. Construction project management is incredibly complex. You're dealing with multiple subcontractors, constantly changing timelines, material deliveries, weather delays, permit issues, inspection schedules, and budget constraints that shift daily. The software solutions available were either generic project management tools that didn't understand construction-specific needs, or industry-specific tools that were so complex they required dedicated IT staff to operate. I'd been moonlighting on a concept for months, building prototypes on nights and weekends. The idea was specialized project management software for mid-sized construction companies, firms that were too big for basic project management tools, but too small for enterprise-level construction software. I'd talked to dozens of contractors and construction managers during my research. The response was overwhelmingly positive. These companies were desperate for something that could handle their specific workflows without requiring a computer science degree to operate. One contractor, a guy named Bill, who ran a residential construction company with about 40 employees, put it perfectly. We need something that can track our jobs, our subs, our materials, and our schedules, without making us feel like we need to hire a tech guy just to enter data. I'd built a working prototype that addressed exactly that need. It was intuitive enough for a foreman to use on a job site, powerful enough to handle complex multi-phase projects, and designed specifically for the construction industry's unique requirements. More importantly, I had validation. I'd shown the prototype to 15 different construction companies, and 12 of them said they'd pay for the software if I could build the full version. I had letters of intent totaling over $180,000 in potential first-year revenue. The problem was, I needed capital. not just for development costs, but for proper market research, legal fees to set up the business entity, trademark and patent applications, initial marketing, office space, and enough runway to support myself while I got the company off the ground. I'd done detailed financial projections showing I needed approximately $65,000 total. I had just over half of that saved up, which meant I needed about $30,000 more to launch properly. I could have gone to a bank, but getting a business loan without collateral or an established business history was nearly impossible, especially for a tech startup. I could have looked for angel investors, but that would mean giving up equity in something I believed could be huge. The obvious solution, at least in my mind, was to ask my family for help. This wasn't some pie-in-the-sky request. I had a detailed business plan, market research, financial projections, and letters of intent from potential customers. I wasn't asking for charity. I was offering them a chance to invest in what I genuinely believed could be a million-dollar opportunity. I spent 3 weeks preparing for the conversation. I had the business plan professionally printed and bound. I created a presentation with slides showing market size, competitive analysis, revenue projections, and a clear timeline for profitability. I even had my uncle, who worked in finance, review the numbers to make sure everything looked reasonable. I scheduled dinner at their house for a Sunday evening in March. Joseph was there, as usual, lounging in the living room playing Grand Theft Auto while I helped my mother set the table. I'd brought a bottle of wine and flowers for my mom, hoping to set a positive tone for the conversation. During dinner, I waited for the right moment, then launched into my presentation. I started with the market opportunity, explained the problem I was solving, demonstrated the prototype on my laptop, and showed them the letters of intent from potential customers. I've been working on this for the past year, I began, pulling out the printed business plan I'd spent dozens of hours perfecting. There's a real need in the construction industry for specialized project management software. The existing solutions are either too generic or too complex. I've built a prototype that addresses this gap, and I've validated the concept with potential customers. My father barely looked at the papers I'd placed in front of him. He was cutting his steak with the mechanical precision of someone who wasn't really paying attention. "Finn, you already have a good job," he said without looking up. "You're making decent money, you've got benefits, you're building a career. Why risk all of that for some pipe dream?" "Because this isn't a pipe dream, Dad. I've done the research. I've validated the concept. Construction companies are dying for better project management tools, and what's available now is either too complex or too generic. This addresses a specific need in a growing market." I opened my laptop and showed them the demo. The interface was clean and intuitive. You could see job timelines, track subcontractor schedules, monitor material deliveries, and generate reports with just a few clicks. "Look at this," I said, clicking through the features. A project manager can see the status of every job in their pipeline. They can identify bottlenecks before they become problems. They can communicate with subcontractors directly through the platform. This solves real problems that cost these companies thousands of dollars in delays and miscommunication. Joseph looked up from his phone long enough to glance at my laptop screen. "Looks complicated," he said, then went back to scrolling through Instagram. My mother chimed in with the comment that still burns in my memory. "Honey, you know we think it's wonderful that you're so ambitious, but starting a business is incredibly risky. Most of them fail. And you don't have any business experience. Which is why I need the capital to do this right," I pressed on. "I'm not asking you to fund some fantasy. I'm asking for $30,000 to bridge the gap between what I've saved and what I need to launch properly. And it's not a gift. It's an investment. I'll pay you back with interest, or you can take equity in the company." I showed them the financial projections. Break even within 18 months, profitability by year 2. Conservative estimates showing $500,000 in revenue by year 3. My father set down his fork and looked at me with the expression I'd seen 1,000 times growing up. The look that said I was being unreasonable. "Finn, we're not venture capitalists. We're accountants. We deal in certainties, not maybes. Starting a tech company is basically gambling, and we don't gamble with our retirement fund." "But this isn't gambling," I insisted. "I have letters of intent from 12 different construction companies. That's $180,000 in potential first-year revenue. I have a working prototype. I've been in the industry for 6 years. I understand both the technical requirements and the business needs." "Letters of intent aren't contracts," my father said dismissively. "And potential revenue isn't actual revenue. What happens if these companies decide they don't want your software after all? What happens if a competitor launches something similar? What happens if you can't scale the business?" Every question he asked was reasonable from a risk management perspective, but what frustrated me was that these were all solvable problems, not deal breakers. Every business has risks, Dad. But this is a calculated risk with real market validation. I've spent a year researching this opportunity. I've talked to dozens of potential customers. I've analyzed the competition. I've built and tested the product. This isn't some random idea I came up with last week. Joseph, who had been scrolling through his phone during the entire conversation, suddenly looked up. Maybe you should just stick with what you're good at, Finn. Not everyone is cut out to be an entrepreneur. The dismissiveness in his voice was like a slap in the face. Here was my younger brother, who had never successfully completed anything in his life, telling me to stay in my lane while my parents nodded along. Think about it logically, my father continued. You're asking us to risk a significant amount of money on something that might work out. And even if it does work out, there's no guarantee you'll be successful. The tech industry is brutal. Companies fail all the time, even ones with good ideas and smart people behind them. Every business is a risk, I shot back, feeling my composure starting to crack. But this is a calculated risk with real market validation and proven demand. Finn, my mother said in that patronizing tone I'd heard my entire childhood, we just want what's best for you. And what's best for you is stability. You have a good job, good benefits, a steady paycheck. Don't throw that away chasing some fantasy. The word fantasy hit me like a physical blow. I'd spent a year of my life building something real, something that solved actual problems for real customers, and my own mother was calling it a fantasy. This isn't a fantasy, Mom. This is a legitimate business opportunity. I have customers ready to buy the product. You have potential customers, my father corrected. There's a big difference. The conversation continued for another 20 minutes, but the outcome was already decided. My parents had made up their minds before I'd even started talking. They weren't evaluating my business plan or considering the opportunity. They were rejecting it based on their preconceived notions about risk and success. My father's final word, we can't support this venture, Finn. It's simply too risky. We have our own financial future to consider, and we can't afford to lose $30,000 on something that might not work out. I drove home that night feeling like I'd been punched in the stomach. Not just because they'd said no, but because of how they'd said it. Like I was a child with delusions of grandeur instead of an adult with a legitimate business opportunity backed by research and market validation. But here's the thing about rejection. Sometimes it's exactly the motivation you need. I went to work the next morning with a fire in my belly I'd never felt before. If my family wouldn't believe in me, I'd prove them wrong another way. I spent the next 3 months researching alternative funding options. I applied for a business line of credit using my house as collateral. I looked into SBA loans. I even considered crowdfunding, though that was still a relatively new concept in 2019. The business line of credit turned out to be my best option. It took 3 months of paperwork, financial statements, and meetings with loan officers, but eventually I got approved for $35,000 at 8.5% interest. Combined with my savings, I had enough to move forward with the business. I gave my boss 6 weeks' notice and spent every evening and weekend for the next month and a half preparing for the transition. I incorporated the business, set up accounting systems, leased a small office space, and hired my first employee, a front-end developer I'd worked with at TechFlow, who was excited about joining a startup. By September, I was working on my company full-time. I called it ConstructFlow, and our tagline was Project Management Built for Construction. The first year was brutal. 18-hour days, ramen noodles for dinner, stress levels that probably took years off my life. There were nights when I lay awake wondering if my parents had been right, if I'd made a terrible mistake leaving a stable job to chase an impossible dream. But slowly, steadily, it started working. My first customer signed up in November, a residential builder in Dallas who'd been in my original research group. My second customer came in January, a commercial contractor in Houston who'd heard about us through word of mouth. By the end of year 1, I had 8 paying customers and $140,000 in annual recurring revenue. Meanwhile, Joseph had a new dream. He decided he wanted to start a luxury car rental company catering to high-end clients who wanted to rent Lamborghinis and Ferraris for special occasions, weddings, anniversaries, prom nights, corporate events. He'd seen something similar in Miami and was convinced it would work in our area. He'd done zero market research, had no experience in the automotive industry, had no understanding of insurance requirements or liability issues, and his business plan consisted of a PowerPoint presentation with pictures of expensive cars he'd downloaded from manufacturer websites. But he had something I didn't: complete and unwavering support from our parents. The conversation I wasn't supposed to hear happened at a family barbecue in June, about 9 months after they'd turned down my request. My cousin David was getting married, and my extended family had gathered at my parents' house for an engagement party. I'd gone inside to use the bathroom and was walking back through the kitchen when I heard my father's voice from the dining room. "We've looked at the numbers, and we think we can make it work," he was saying. "The initial investment is substantial, but Joseph's done his research, and the potential returns are impressive." I stopped walking and pressed myself against the kitchen wall, just out of sight. "How substantial are we talking about?" I heard my uncle ask. "Well, he'll need about $625,000 total to get started properly. We're looking at taking out a loan against the business and our house, but with the projected revenue, we should be able to pay it back within 3 to 5 years. I stopped breathing. $625,000 for Joseph's luxury car rental fantasy. The same parents who told me that $30,000 was too risky were about to gamble more than $500,000 on my brother's complete lack of a plan. "That's a lot of money, Robert," my uncle said carefully. "It is," my father agreed, "but this is Joseph we're talking about. He's got vision, he's got drive, and he's got connections in the luxury car market. Plus, the rental market is really underserved in our region. There's definitely demand for high-end vehicles." I wanted to walk into that room and ask my father exactly what connections Joseph had, and exactly what research he'd done, and exactly how luxury car rental was less risky than proven project management software with validated customer demand. "What kind of cars are we talking about?" my aunt asked. "Lamborghinis, Ferraris, McLarens, Porsches." Joseph's voice joined the conversation. "High-end stuff that people want to drive but can't afford to own. The rental rates are incredible. We're talking $500 to $1,500 per day, depending on the vehicle." "And the insurance?" my uncle asked. "That's all factored in," Joseph said confidently. "The margins are still excellent even with comprehensive coverage." I seriously doubted Joseph had done any research into specialty insurance for exotic car rentals, which is notoriously expensive and complex. But my parents seemed convinced. "We're so proud of him," my mother said. "He's really thought this through. He's even identified specific vehicle models that offer the best return on investment." I'd heard enough. I slipped out through the back door and sat in my car for 10 minutes, trying to process what I'd just learned. My parents, who'd rejected my business plan because it was too risky, were about to bet their financial future on Joseph's fantasy of renting Lamborghinis to strangers. 2 weeks later, Joseph was driving a brand new BMW M5 that he claimed was part of his fleet research. The car cost $105,000, and according to Joseph, he needed to understand the luxury car market before making decisions about his rental fleet. The BMW was just the beginning. Over the next few months, Joseph bought a used Porsche 911, $75,000, a Lamborghini Huracan, $250,000, and a Ferrari $488, $300,000. Each purchase was justified as market research or fleet development, but the luxury car rental business never actually launched. Joseph spent his time driving around town in different exotic cars, posting Instagram photos at high-end restaurants and nightclubs, talking about his upcoming business launch while never actually taking steps to create a legitimate company. He did spend tens of thousands of dollars on a website that never went live, marketing materials for a company that never opened, and business development trips to Miami and Las Vegas that were really just expensive vacations where he posed next to other people's luxury cars. Meanwhile, my business was thriving. By year 2, I had 37 customers and $580,000 in annual recurring revenue. I'd hired 4 employees and moved into a larger office space. By year 3, I was closing in on $1 million in revenue and had started getting acquisition offers from larger companies. The irony wasn't lost on me. While my parents were hemorrhaging money on Joseph's fantasy, I was building exactly the kind of successful tech company they'd told me was impossible. But the success came with a price. The stress of running a growing business while watching my family implode financially was taking its toll. I'd gained 20 pounds from stress eating and wasn't sleeping well. I'd started avoiding family gatherings because I couldn't stand listening to Joseph talk about his business, while my parents nodded along supportively. The first hint that my parents were in serious financial trouble came during a phone call with my mother in November of my 3rd year in business. "Finn, honey, I hope you're doing well with your little software company," she began, which immediately put me on guard, because my mother only used that artificially sweet tone when she wanted something. "It's going really well, Mom. We're actually on track to hit $1 million in revenue this year." "Oh, that's wonderful, dear. Listen, your father and I were wondering if you might be able to help us with something. We're having some cash flow issues with the business, and we were hoping you might be able to loan us some money to get through the next few months." I almost laughed. After everything they'd put me through, after rejecting my request for help, and then throwing away more than $500,000 on Joseph's delusions, they had the nerve to ask me for money. How much are we talking about, Mom? Well, we'd need about $50,000 to cover some immediate expenses, just until we get back on our feet. And Joseph? Is he contributing to this solution? There was a long pause. Joseph is dealing with some challenges right now, Finn. The car rental business didn't work out the way we hoped, and he's looking for new opportunities. What kind of challenges? Another pause. He's had some legal issues. Some of the cars were repossessed, and there are some disputes with creditors. It's all very complicated. Of course it was complicated. Everything with Joseph was always complicated. I was willing to bet he'd been making payments on luxury cars with credit cards and personal loans, probably lying to creditors about his income and business prospects. Mom, I'm sorry you're going through financial difficulties, but I can't just write you a check for $50,000. That's a significant amount of money, and given what happened when I asked for help 3 years ago, I think you can understand why I'm not jumping at the chance to get involved in the family finances. Finn, this is completely different, she said, her voice taking on that sharp edge I remembered from childhood arguments. We're not asking you to invest in some risky business venture. We're asking for help from our son during a difficult time. You mean the same son whose risky business venture you refused to support? The one that's now generating 7 figures in revenue? That's not fair, Finn. We did what we thought was best at the time. No, Mom. You did what was convenient at the time. You supported Joseph's dreams while dismissing mine, and now you want me to bail you out of the consequences. The conversation ended with my mother in tears, and me feeling like the villain for not immediately opening my checkbook. But I'd learned something important over the past 3 years. Financial boundaries are just as important as emotional ones. Over the next 6 months, the calls became more frequent and more desperate. My parents were facing foreclosure on their house. The accounting firm was bleeding clients as word spread about their financial troubles. Joseph had disappeared entirely, apparently living with some girlfriend in Colorado while avoiding the legal consequences of his failed business ventures. I learned through my uncle that the situation was even worse than I'd imagined. Joseph hadn't just bought the luxury cars with loans against my parents' assets. He'd also taken out credit cards in the business name, borrowed against the cars themselves, and even convinced my parents to co-sign on additional loans for business development. The total debt was approaching $800,000, secured against everything my parents owned. The cars had been repossessed, leaving them with massive loans and no assets to show for it. Joseph had fled the state, leaving my parents to deal with angry creditors and potential legal action. The final call came on a Tuesday evening in May. I was at home reviewing quarterly reports when my phone rang. It was my father, and he sounded terrible. Finn, I need to be completely honest with you. We're going to lose everything. The house, the business, our retirement savings, all of it. Dad, I'm sorry to hear that, but wait, just let me finish, he interrupted. I know we haven't always been the most supportive of your business, and I know you're probably angry about the Joseph situation, but we're desperate. We've lost everything betting on your brother, and now we need your help. I waited for him to continue. We've been talking to a financial advisor, and he says the only way to save the house is if we can come up with $180,000 to pay down the debt and restructure the loans. We know that's a lot of money, but with your business doing so well, you want me to give you $180,000. Not give, he said quickly. Loan. We'd pay you back as soon as we get back on our feet. Dad, how exactly do you plan to pay me back? You just told me you're losing the business and facing foreclosure. Well, that's what we wanted to talk to you about. Our advisor says if you were willing to sell your house and move back home for a while, we could use that money to save everything. It would just be temporary until we get everything sorted out. I actually had to put the phone down for a moment. They wanted me to sell my house. The house I'd worked my ass off to buy. The house I'd used as collateral to start the business they'd refused to support, and move back in with them so they could fix the mess they'd made betting on Joseph's fantasies. Dad, let me make sure I understand this correctly. You want me to sell my house, uproot my life, and move back home so you can avoid the consequences of spending $625,000 on Joseph's failed business? Finn, please don't make this about Joseph. This is about family. This is about helping your parents when we need it most. No, Dad, this is exactly about Joseph. This entire situation exists because you chose to bet our family's financial future on his delusions while telling me that my actual business plan was too risky. We made mistakes, he admitted, but we can't change the past. We can only ask for help now. You're right, Dad. You can't change the past. And the past is that when I needed help, when I had a legitimate business opportunity with real market validation, you told me it was too risky and you couldn't support it. But when Joseph wanted to play with expensive cars, you mortgaged everything you owned to fund his fantasies. Finn, I'm not finished, I cut him off. I built this business with my own money, taking my own risks, working 18-hour days for years, while you all wrote me off as a failure waiting to happen. And now that it's successful, now that I've proven you wrong, you want me to liquidate everything I've worked for to bail you out. There was silence on the other end of the line. The answer is no, Dad. I'm not giving you $180,000. I'm not selling my house. I'm not moving back home. You made your choice 3 years ago, and now you get to live with the consequences. Finn, we're your parents. We raised you. We loved you. You loved Joseph, I interrupted. You raised Joseph. You invested in Joseph. I raised myself and I built this business myself, and I'm keeping it myself. I hung up the phone and sat in my living room for a long time, staring out at the yard I'd landscaped myself, in the house I'd bought with money I'd earned, thinking about the path that had led me to this moment. 3 weeks later, they showed up at my house. I was working in my home office when I heard the doorbell ring. I glanced out the window and saw my parents' car in the driveway, the same Honda Civic my mother had been driving for 8 years since they'd sold her newer car to help fund Joseph's ventures. I opened the door to find my parents standing on my front porch, looking older and more defeated than I'd ever seen them. My father had lost weight, and there were dark circles under his eyes. My mother looked like she'd been crying for days. "Hello, Finn," my mother said softly. "Mom, Dad." I stepped outside and closed the door behind me. "What are you doing here?" "We were hoping we could talk," my father said. "Face to face. It's important. I think we've said everything that needs to be said." "Finn, please," my mother pleaded. "We drove 3 hours to see you. Just give us a few minutes." Against my better judgment, I gestured toward the chairs on my front porch. We sat down, and for a moment, nobody spoke. It was a warm afternoon, and I could hear kids playing in the neighbor's backyard. Normal sounds of a normal life, which felt surreal given the conversation I was about to have. Finally, my father broke the silence. "The foreclosure is final. We have 30 days to get out of the house." "I'm sorry to hear that. The business is gone too. We had to sell it for practically nothing just to pay off some of the debt. Your mother and I are looking at bankruptcy. Where's Joseph in all this?" My parents exchanged a look. My mother answered, Joseph is in rehab. He had some problems with drugs, the stress of the business failing, and some legal issues. And it's been very difficult." So there it was. The golden child, the one they'd bet everything on, was a drug addict in rehab while they lost their home and their business. "We know we made mistakes," my father continued. "We know we should have supported your business when you asked. We know we put too much faith in Joseph and not enough faith in you." "Okay, we're not asking you to fix everything," my mother said. "We're just asking for enough help to get back on our feet. Maybe help with a deposit on an apartment, something small until we figure out what's next." I looked at these two people who had raised me, who had fed and clothed and housed me for 18 years, who had also systematically undermined my confidence and dismissed my achievements and invested their future in my brother's failures. "Mom, Dad, I need you to understand something. 3 years ago, when I came to you with a business plan and asked for help, you didn't just say no. You made me feel stupid for even asking. You told me I was being unrealistic and that I should be grateful for my steady job and stop chasing fantasies." They both looked down at their hands. "And then, less than a year later, you took out a $625,000 loan to fund Joseph's luxury car rental dream. No business plan, no market research, no experience in the industry. Just Joseph saying he had a good feeling about expensive cars. We know," my father said quietly. "We know we made the wrong choice." "Do you?" I stood up from my chair. "Because even now, even sitting here asking for my help, you still haven't apologized for rejecting my business when it actually had potential. You're sorry you bet on Joseph, but you're not sorry you didn't bet on me." "Finn, that's not true," my mother started. "It is true, Mom. You're here because you need money, not because you realize you treated me unfairly. If Joseph's business had succeeded, if you weren't facing foreclosure, would you be here apologizing for not supporting me?" Neither of them answered. "The truth is, you've never seen me as anything more than the backup plan, the responsible one who'll always be there to clean up the mess. Well, I'm done being the backup plan." I walked to the front door and turned back to face them. "I've worked 16-hour days for 3 years to build something you told me was impossible. I've proven that my risky idea was actually a solid business opportunity. I've succeeded despite your lack of support, not because of it." "Finn, please," my mother said, tears streaming down her face. "We'll pay you back, however long it takes." "With what money?" You just told me you lost the house and the business. You have no income and no assets. What exactly are you going to pay me back with? We'll figure something out, my father said desperately. We'll get jobs. We'll work. We'll do whatever it takes. Dad, you're 62 years old. Mom, you're 59. You've never worked anywhere but your own accounting firm. What jobs are you going to get that will allow you to pay back tens of thousands of dollars while also supporting yourselves? The truth hung in the air between us like a weight. The answer is no, I said firmly. I'm not giving you money. I'm not helping you find an apartment. I'm not co-signing any loans. I'm not letting you move in with me. You made your choice when you decided Joseph's fantasies were worth more than my proven business plan. Now you have to live with that choice. How can you be so heartless? My mother sobbed. We're your parents, and I'm your son. The son you dismissed and ignored and overlooked for his entire life. The son whose success you still can't acknowledge even when you're sitting here asking for help. I opened my front door. I think you should leave now. My father stood up slowly, his shoulders slumped in defeat. Finn, if you change your mind, I won't. I watched them walk to their car, and I'll admit there was a moment where I almost called out, almost told them to wait, almost offered them something just to ease the pain I saw in their faces. But then I remembered the feeling of sitting in their dining room 3 years ago, laying out my business plan, explaining my vision, asking for their support, and hearing my father tell me it was too risky, while my brother smirked and told me to stick to what I was good at. I remembered the months that followed, when I worked 18-hour days and ate ramen noodles and stressed about every expense while they funded Joseph's luxury car fantasy with more money than I'd asked for by a factor of 20. I remembered all the times throughout my childhood when my achievements were glossed over while Joseph's mediocrity was celebrated. All the times I was told to be grateful for what I had while Joseph was given everything he wanted. And I closed the door. That was 6 months ago. I haven't heard from them since. YouTube just dropped this new hype feature. If you're hooked on this story, smash that hype button. It tells YouTube this video deserves to blow up, and it keeps even crazier stories coming your way. After 10 years of sacrifice, my stepdaughter banned me from her graduation so her real dad could take my seat. Her mom defended her. So I quietly canceled her tuition payments, filed for divorce, and watched her dream crash faster than her fake gratitude. Hey Reddit, long-time lurker here. Never thought that I'd actually post, but I've been sitting on this story for a while and figured it's time to share. Let's just say I learned the hard way what happens when you give everything to people who only see you as a backup plan. It's not one of those dramatic movie-type stories, just real life, messy, and a little satisfying in the end. If you told me 10 years ago that I, Daniel, 41 male, would end up basically raising someone else's kid while her real dad played superhero twice a year, I'd have laughed in your face. But that's exactly what happened. Jenna and I got together a little over a decade ago, and her daughter Mia was around 12 then. Tiny kid, all smiles, messy hair. Called me Uncle Dan at first because she didn't know what else to call me. I didn't mind. I wasn't trying to step into the dad role overnight. I just wanted to be there for both of them. Make life a little easier. And for a while, it actually worked. Things were good, like really good. Mia was a sweet kid, the type who'd make you a crooked Father's Day card and spell your name wrong, but you'd still put it on the fridge like it was a trophy. She'd run to the door when I got home from work, hug me around the waist, and start talking 100 miles an hour about whatever happened at school. I used to help her with her homework at the dining table while Jenna cooked, and it actually felt like we were a normal little family. No drama, no nonsense. But there was always Brian, the real dad. He'd show up maybe once, sometimes twice a year, usually with some cheap gift and that fake, I missed you so much sweetheart energy that kids fall for. He had this way of making an entrance, like a celebrity dropping by his fans. Mia would light up every time, and I'd just step aside. I didn't compete. I figured kids should have both parents in their lives, even if one of them's allergic to responsibility. He'd promise her trips, dinners, father-daughter weekends that never happened. I'd be the one picking up the pieces when she got disappointed again. But no matter how many times that happened, Brian was still the fun dad, and I was the guy who made sure the bills were paid and her lunchbox had food in it. I didn't complain. I told myself this is what being an adult was, doing the right thing even when no one claps for it. Years rolled by. Mia turned into a smart kid, top of her class, always reading or arguing about something. She wanted to study law, said she wanted to make a difference, which I thought was kind of funny because she couldn't even make her bed half the time. But still, I was proud. When she got accepted into college, it felt like a win for all of us. Now, let me be real. College is expensive. She didn't get a full scholarship, and Jenna hadn't worked in years. So guess who funded everything? Yeah, me. I handled it all. Every time I made a payment, Jenna would tell me, "We'll pay you back someday," like it was a movie promise. Never bothered me much because I saw it as an investment in Mia's future. I didn't have kids of my own, and medically couldn't. So helping her build a life kind of gave me a purpose. For a while, everything stayed normal. Mia would come home for breaks, give me quick hugs, and update me on her classes. She'd talk about professors she liked, how tough exams were, or how she was making new friends. She was still polite, still thankful, still my kid, even if not by blood. But then something changed. It started small. Missed calls, short replies to texts, fewer visits home. Jenna brushed it off, saying Mia was just busy with her studies. I didn't think much of it at first because, well, college life is hectic. Still, I stayed proud. She was almost done with school. After years of working extra hours, skipping vacations, and tightening the budget, we were so close to seeing her walk across that stage with a degree in law. Man, I was ready for that day. I pictured sitting in that audience, maybe tearing up a little when her name got called. Not that I'd admit it. I even imagined her thanking me, maybe with that old smile she used to have when she was a kid. The one that said, "Thanks, Dad." Jenna and I talked about the graduation plans often. I told her I wanted to take Mia out to dinner after the ceremony. Something nice. She nodded and said it was a great idea. We even looked at restaurant options. It felt good, like everything had come full circle. Looking back now, that was probably the last time things felt normal. Back then, though, I was just the proud idiot who thought his years of loyalty and hard work actually meant something. I was counting down the months till graduation, telling myself this was the finish line, the day all those years of effort would finally feel worth it. And man, if only I knew how wrong I was. Mia's university goes all out for graduation. I'm talking red carpets, banners, photographers, the whole future of tomorrow speech thing. They even have a short segment where a few students get to thank their families. Kind of like a mini speech moment they submit in advance. I'd been waiting for that day. Finally, all the late nights, the overtime, the bills, it was going to mean something. The first weird sign came one night when I asked Mia how graduation prep was going. She was on her laptop, typing away, barely looked up. "It's fine," she said, short and dry. I joked, "Fine? That's it? I've waited 10 years for this fine?" She gave a half smile that didn't reach her eyes and said, "You're overhyping it, Dan. It's just a ceremony." That sentence stuck with me. Just a ceremony. I tried to laugh it off, but it felt like she just stomped on something I was proud of. The girl who used to run up to me with report cards saying, "Look, I did it, Dad," suddenly couldn't care less. Over the next few weeks, she got colder. I'd mentioned graduation, and she'd change the subject. "How's the speech coming along?" I asked once. She shrugged. "Haven't decided what to say yet." No smile, no excitement, nothing. Jenna noticed too, but every time I brought it up, she had an excuse ready. "She's just stressed," she'd say. "Law finals are hard." Or, "She's grown up now. You have to let her handle things." But then I started noticing other things. Whispered phone calls. Doors closing when I walked by. Little silences between the two of them that used to never exist. One evening, I came home early from work and caught them mid-conversation at the kitchen table. As soon as they saw me, they went quiet. Mia picked up her phone, and Jenna suddenly became very interested in stirring her coffee. That's when I knew something was wrong. Still, I didn't want to jump to conclusions. I told myself I was being paranoid. Maybe I was just reading too much into it. A week later, Mia's university emailed a notice about guest passes for the graduation. Every student gets to list 2 people who'll be seated in the reserved section. I figured it was a good chance to double-check travel details, so I clicked the link. I stared at the screen for a solid minute before it even registered. Listed guests, Jenna Smith, mother, and Brian Turner, father. No Dan, no stepdad, not even a typo. Just erased. I actually refreshed the page like an idiot, thinking maybe there was a glitch. Nope, same thing. My name was nowhere. I sat there for a while, just staring at it. Then I laughed. Not because it was funny, but because of how pathetic it looked. 10 years of sacrifice. And in the end, I didn't even make the seating chart. When Jenna got home, I didn't yell. I waited until dinner. Then I slid my phone across the table with the guest list open and asked, "Want to explain this?" She barely blinked. "Oh, that. Mia wanted her real father to be there. It's her day, Dan. Don't make it about you." That line hit harder than I expected. Not because of what she said, but how casual she was about it. Like I'd been some sort of long-term babysitter and my contract just expired. I asked, "Her real father?" You mean the guy who shows up every other year and can't even remember her major? Jenna sighed, the kind of sigh people use when they think they're being patient with a child. Please don't do this. You've been great, but it's normal for her to want her biological dad at graduation. I just sat there, calm, cold. My brain went from angry to calculating real quick. Because the thing about me, I don't explode, I plan. That night, I didn't argue anymore. I just said, sure, it's her day, and that was it. Jenna looked relieved, like she'd dodged a bullet. The next morning, I woke up early and made coffee, opened my laptop, decided to see what else they were planning that I apparently wasn't invited to, and guess what I found? Mia's social media had new photos. She and Brian side by side at the university. Big smiles. The caption, "So lucky to have the best dad ever. Couldn't have done it without you." It was almost funny how fast my stomach dropped. Not from sadness, just disbelief. I had paid for that best dad ever photo. I'd bought the outfit she was wearing, the tuition for that campus she was standing on. I'd literally built the moment she was using to pretend I didn't exist. Jenna must have known I'd see it. Maybe she thought I'd just swallow it like always. But that post told me everything I needed to know. They wanted Brian to look like the hero. They wanted me to fade quietly in the background. And they thought I'd let it happen. Not this time. I closed the laptop, finished my coffee, and leaned back in the chair. For 10 years, I'd been paying for everyone else's comfort. Now I was going to pay for mine. If they could erase me publicly, fine. I'd erase my name from the tuition portal next. And that, I decided, would be the last payment I ever made for either of them. The next morning, I woke up calm. Not the kind of fake calm you use before a fight, but the real kind. Like a weight finally fell off my shoulders. I didn't slam doors or make a scene. I made coffee, sat down at my desk, and opened my laptop. The university portal was already bookmarked. Old habit. For years, I'd log in every month to make sure everything was covered. But this time, I logged in with a different goal. The numbers popped up on the screen. Just 2 payments left, both unpaid. I stared at the total, let out a small laugh, and clicked Cancel Automatic Payments. It asked for confirmation twice, like the system couldn't believe I was serious. I confirmed both times. Then I emailed the finance office politely, saying I'd no longer be responsible for any future tuition. Short, professional, no explanations. It felt good, like shutting down a long, expensive subscription that never brought me joy. Next, I opened my bank app. Years of transactions told the same story. Groceries, car repairs, insurance, utilities. I started redirecting everything. I removed my card from the joint grocery delivery account and changed every recurring payment that had household in it. I even opened a new savings account and moved the tuition money there. Labeled it Freedom Fund. By the time I finished, the silence in the house felt different. Clean. I hadn't realized how loud it had been living with 2 people who drained me in every possible way. That evening, Jenna came home with a cart full of groceries. The usual stuff. She went to pay and called out, "Hey, did you change something with the card? It's not going through." I didn't even look up from my laptop. "Yeah," I said casually. "I stopped paying for the household stuff. You've got 2 adults here now. Time for some independence." She blinked, clearly not expecting that tone. "What's that supposed to mean?" "It means," I said, finally looking up, "I'm done sponsoring people who treat me like furniture." She opened her mouth to argue, but nothing came out. I could see the gears turning. She wanted to yell, but deep down she knew she didn't have a leg to stand on. For the next few days, the atmosphere was weirdly quiet. No more small talk at dinner, no casual, "Can you transfer me something for gas?" Texts. I'd go to work, come home, cook my own meals, and eat in silence. I'd even started labeling my groceries. Not out of pettiness, but because I wanted them to know that the free ride was officially over. A week later, the first email hit. Mia's university sent a payment reminder. I was on the couch reading when Jenna saw it pop up on her phone. "Oh my God," she muttered, scrolling fast. "They're saying the payment didn't go through. Did your bank mess up or something?" I didn't even look up from my book. "Weird," I said. "Might be a glitch." You should probably call them." She did, right there on speaker. The woman from the finance office confirmed what I already knew. "We have no payment scheduled and no authorized payer on file at this time." Jenna froze. "But my husband always—" She stopped mid-sentence, glanced at me, and said, "I'll figure it out." Then she hung up. I spent the afternoon working, feeling oddly productive. It's amazing how much energy you get back when no one's draining you financially or emotionally. Then came my birthday. I didn't expect a parade, but some acknowledgement would have been nice. Nothing. No text, no card, not even a hey, happy birthday. Jenna barely said good morning. Mia didn't even make eye contact. The next day, though, they both cornered me in the kitchen like it was an intervention. Jenna started, voice soft and fake sweet. Honey, the university called again? They said unless the balance is paid, Mia can't walk at graduation. Mia crossed her arms beside her. It's embarrassing, Dan. Everyone else's parents are paying theirs on time. I stared at them for a second, then smiled. So, just to make sure I've got this straight, you forgot my birthday yesterday, but today, you remembered the bank login? Jenna rolled her eyes. Don't make this about you. This is about Mia's future. I leaned back in my chair. Her future's exactly what she made it. You both made choices. I'm just matching the energy. Silence. Just the sound of the refrigerator humming behind us. Later that evening, I sat outside on the patio with my coffee. The sun was setting, the house was quiet, and inside I could hear faint voices. Jenna and Mia panicking about tuition, groceries, bills. I just sat there, listening to the chaos from a distance, finally calm. 10 years of being the problem solver, the provider, the backup dad, gone. For once, I didn't feel guilty. I felt free. And as their voices rose inside, I took another sip of coffee and smiled. The financial leash had finally snapped, and they were the ones choking on the slack. It didn't take long for the storm to hit. Just 2 days later, I came home from work and found the front door wide open. Mia's voice was echoing through the house, loud enough for the neighbors to hear. You ruined my life! She screamed, standing in the middle of the living room with her laptop in her hands. Her face was red, eyes wet, and her breathing shaky like she'd just run a marathon. Do you have any idea what you've done? I set my keys down calmly. I assume this has to do with the tuition again? She held out her laptop like it was evidence in court. I can't graduate. They won't let me walk. I've been planning this for months. Everyone's expecting me to be there. I leaned against the wall, arms crossed. So, let me get this straight. You cut me out of your graduation, erased my name, replaced me with Brian, the guy who couldn't even pay for your textbooks, and now you're shocked that your free ride ended? Don't twist this, she yelled, voice cracking. You knew how important this was to me. I nodded slowly. Yeah, I did. That's why I paid for every single class up until now. But apparently, I'm only good for that, right? That's when Jenna stepped in. I hadn't even noticed her sitting on the couch. Okay, that's enough, she snapped, standing up. You're being cruel, Dan. This is her big moment. You're acting out of spite. I turned to her, keeping my tone cool. Spite? You mean boundaries? You two have been using me for 10 years. I pay for everything. And the moment it's time to actually show appreciation, I get erased from the picture. Jenna scoffed, folding her arms. You're being ridiculous. She just wanted her real dad there. You should have understood that. Funny, I said, smiling faintly. I'm petty now, but useful when I'm paying. That's convenient. Mia's voice trembled. You don't understand. Everyone's going to think I'm a failure now. I can't not graduate. Then maybe call Brian, I said. He's the hero, remember? Maybe he can show up for once with more than a smile and a half-empty wallet. That made her snap. She slammed her laptop shut and pointed at me. You're pathetic. You're jealous of him because he's my real dad. That one actually made me laugh. A small, bitter laugh that made her angrier. You're right, Mia. He's your real dad. And when real bills show up, he can deal with them too. Jenna slammed her hand on the table. Enough, Dan. You're not just hurting Mia, you're destroying this family. I looked her straight in the eye. What family? The one I paid for while you sat home and made excuses for her? The one that cut me out of everything I built? She opened her mouth, but nothing came out. For the first time, I saw her face fall, like she was realizing this wasn't one of our usual arguments she could smooth over later. I walked over to the counter, grabbed a small folder I'd left there earlier, and dropped it on the table. You're right about one thing, Jenna, I said. I am done destroying this family. That's why I already talked to a lawyer. Her face froze. What? Divorce papers, I said plainly. I'm filing this week. You and Mia will need to find somewhere else to live. I've asked you to move out. My lawyer will handle the occupancy details. Mia's jaw dropped. You're kicking us out? No, I said, grabbing my keys again. I'm giving you both a chance to live the independent lives you seem to think you already have. You don't need me, remember? Jenna stepped forward, eyes wide. Dan, don't do this. You're overreacting. We can fix this. Overreacting? I smirked. You erased me from her graduation, Jenna. You defended her when she called me jealous. You let her act like I'm nothing but a checkbook. Tell me, what exactly is there to fix? Her lip trembled. You can't just throw us away like this. I looked at her calmly. I'm not throwing you away. I'm just done paying rent for people who never paid respect. Silence filled the room. Mia stood frozen. Jenna's eyes started to water. And for once, I didn't feel bad. I picked up my keys. You'll get official notice soon. But as far as I'm concerned, this house runs on respect. And right now, you're out of credit. Mia muttered under her breath. You'll regret this. I paused, glanced back at her, and said, No, Mia. I've been regretting staying this long. Then I walked out. I sat in my car for a few minutes before driving off. My hands were steady. My chest felt light. For 10 years, I'd been keeping everything running while getting treated like a placeholder. That ended today. Later that night, Jenna sent a long text, trying to play nice, saying I was just emotional, that we could talk it out. I didn't reply. I just turned off my phone and went to bed early for once. The next morning, I woke up early, made coffee, and looked around the kitchen. Half the fridge was empty, the pantry nearly bare, the lights still on because I hadn't turned off the utilities yet. But the house felt different. It finally felt like mine again. I leaned against the counter and muttered to myself, this house runs on respect, not entitlement. And for the first time in years, it actually did. The next few days were quiet. Too quiet. Jenna and Mia walked around the house like ghosts, whispering, slamming doors occasionally, but never directly talking to me. It was obvious they were hoping I'd cave first. I didn't. By day 3, the silence cracked. Jenna cornered me in the kitchen, holding her phone like a loaded weapon. Dan, she said, voice shaking but controlled. Mia talked to the school again. If we don't pay by next week, she won't graduate. Can you please just fix this? For her? I didn't even look up from my coffee. You mean the ceremony where I wasn't invited? Yeah, that one doesn't concern me. Jenna frowned, tone turning desperate. You've always been the adult. Don't do this to her. You know Brian can't. Then maybe Brian shouldn't have played dad if he couldn't pay dad prices. I interrupted, finally looking her in the eye. I'm done being the backup wallet. That's when Jenna tried to guilt trip me one last time. Dan, you raised her. You love her. Doesn't that mean something? I stood up, calm as ever. Yeah, it means I wasted 10 years thinking love was the same thing as respect. Mia stormed out, muttering something about how I'd regret this forever. The door slammed hard enough to rattle the windows. The next morning, my doorbell rang at 8 a.m. I opened it to find Brian standing there, the hero dad himself, wearing cheap cologne and an even cheaper expression. Hey man, he started, pretending to sound friendly. Can we talk? I leaned against the doorframe. About what? Your overdue bills? He sighed dramatically. Look, I heard what's going on. Jenna and Mia are a wreck. I get you're mad, but come on, you can't just leave them stranded like that. I smiled slightly. Sure I can. Watch me. He frowned. You're better than this. No, Brian, I said. I was better than this for 10 years. You were the guy who showed up twice a year and got treated like Superman while I paid every dime. Now you're here because you realized being dad comes with an invoice. His voice got louder. You think you're some kind of hero? You're just bitter. I laughed. You're right. I am bitter. Bitter that I spent years paying for your kid's future while you played catch-up on Father of the Year visits. That hit a nerve. He stepped closer, jabbing a finger at me. You think you can talk to me like that? Yeah, I said, deadpan. I just did. He shoved me hard. Reflex kicked in. I pushed back, and he stumbled onto the porch rail. Try that again, I warned. He looked like he might, but I was faster. I pulled out my phone and started dialing. You want to play tough, Brian? I'll let the cops handle your little dad meltdown. That sobered him up quick. He backed off, muttering curses as he walked down the driveway. You'll regret this, man. Already regretted meeting you, I called after him and shut the door. I stood there for a moment, breathing steadily. No shaking, no guilt, just relief. 10 years ago, I would have apologized. Now, I was done apologizing for having a spine. That night, Jenna came home, pale and tight-lipped. She must have already heard from Brian because she didn't even say hello. She walked straight to the table, dropped a white envelope in front of me and said, You really filed? I looked at the divorce papers she was holding, the copies my lawyer had sent. Yep, I said. You wanted proof? There it is. Her voice cracked. You're throwing away everything. No, I said quietly. You did that when you let your daughter treat me like a stranger. For a second, her expression softened, like maybe she was about to apologize. But then she straightened, looked at me coldly and said, You're heartless. I nodded. Heartless, maybe. Broke? Not anymore. She turned and went upstairs. I heard drawers slamming, closet doors opening, the sound of a suitcase zipper. By morning, half the house looked empty. Mia came down last, glaring like she wanted to set me on fire. You could have just helped, she hissed. And you could have just respected me, I said evenly. Guess we both learned something. No yelling, no guilt trips, no forced smiles. Just quiet. I made myself breakfast, sat down at the table, and realized I hadn't had a peaceful morning in over a decade. Every meal before this had been interrupted by requests, complaints, or some emotional performance. Now, there was nothing. I finished eating, stood up, and looked around the house. Still messy, still half empty, but mine. For the first time, it wasn't a reminder of what I'd lost. It was proof of what I'd finally taken back. And yeah, it was peace. Real peace. The kind that comes after a storm you should have walked away from years ago. For a few weeks, life was quiet. I thought it was over. But apparently, Jenna and Mia weren't done yet. The first sign came from a coworker, Jerry. He stopped by my desk one morning, hesitant. Hey man, everything okay at home? Best it's ever been, I said, sipping my coffee. He scratched his neck. Weird. Someone said you walked out on your family. Something about leaving your stepdaughter a semester short of graduation? I stared at him. Oh, they're doing that now. That's cute. Turns out Jenna and Mia had been on a full-blown sympathy tour. They told anyone who'd listen that I abandoned them and left poor Mia just one payment away from her diploma. Apparently, Jenna even cried to a few mutual friends, saying I turned cruel after all she'd sacrificed. The story was dramatic enough to get people talking. By day 2, my phone was blowing up with texts. Relatives, old friends, even my cousin's wife asking what happened. But the real surprise came that evening when my brother Mark called. What the hell is wrong with you? He said, before I could even say hello. I sighed, leaned back in my chair. Good to hear from you too, Mark. Don't start, he snapped. Mom's been hearing stuff. Jenna says you threw her and her kid out with nothing, after paying for half her degree. Is that true? I rubbed my temple. She left out a few details, like the part where they erased me from the graduation I paid for. Mark paused. Wait, what? So I told him. Everything. Paid every dime for school, car, and bills. How she'd replaced me with her deadbeat father for her big moment, and how Jenna defended it. How I'd finally pulled the plug after a decade of being treated like background noise. When I finished, the line was silent for a moment. Then Mark exhaled. You're serious. Completely. Holy crap, he muttered. They made it sound like you just snapped for no reason. I chuckled. That's their specialty, leaving out the part where they caused the problem. He promised to call Mom and straighten things out. I didn't think much of it until an hour later when Mom called. I was expecting her usual passive tone. Instead, she was fuming. Daniel, I just heard everything, she said, voice sharp. That woman lied to my face. Yeah, I said dryly. She's been practicing. I'll handle it, she said. You've done enough for them. Let them figure life out without your money for once. Then she hung up like she was about to go start a war on Facebook. And oh, she did. By the next day, the story had flipped. Mom called a few relatives, who called others, who started posting their opinions online. By the next day, it started to flip. Over the next couple of weeks, Jenna's poor me act completely unraveled. One of Mia's old high school teachers commented under her sob story post, "Funny how you forgot to thank the man who paid for your education." Someone else added, "Didn't your dad disappear for half your life?" It snowballed from there. The comments piled up. Friends who used to praise Mia for being driven started calling her spoiled. People began pointing out that Jenna hadn't worked in years while pretending to be the victim. Even better, the story reached the university circle. A few of Mia's classmates heard what happened and started whispering about it on their student page. Entitled, Ungrateful, Fake. Her image was tanking faster than her GPA. Meanwhile, I kept quiet. I didn't post anything, didn't reply to messages, didn't defend myself publicly. The truth was doing the job for me. Then, one night, about 2 weeks later, I got a call from an unknown number. Normally, I'd ignore it, but something told me to answer. Hello? A woman's voice came through, calm but nervous. Is this Dan? Yeah, who's this? There was a pause. You don't know me, but I'm Brian's sister. I think you deserve to know the truth. I sat up straight. Brian's sister? Yes. I've been watching all this play out online, and it's not right. My brother's an idiot, but Jenna's worse. She was planning to leave you. I stayed quiet, letting her continue. She told Brian that once Mia graduated, she was done. She said you'd served your purpose, paid for school, kept them comfortable, and then she'd reconnect with Brian for good. They were already talking about moving in together again. She just wanted to wait until Mia finished, so it didn't look suspicious. For a second, I didn't even know what to say. You're sure? She said it to me, the woman replied, sounding disgusted. I told her she was using you and she just laughed. Said you were too nice to ever realize it. I leaned back, staring at the ceiling. Everything clicked. The weird silences, the sudden coldness, the fake smiles when I talked about graduation. It had all been part of the plan. Jenna never planned to stay. She just needed me to finish paying her daughter's way out. The caller continued, softer now. I don't know if it helps, but I wanted you to hear it from someone who isn't on their side. It helps, I said quietly. Thank you. A few minutes later, she texted me the same details, screenshots included, just so I'd have proof. When I hung up, I just sat there for a long time. All that effort, 10 years of loyalty, money, time, and it had been leading to this. But the funny part? They'd played themselves. Their little plan fell apart before it ever finished. The graduation was gone. The money was gone. The sympathy? Gone too. I stood up, looked around the house, clean, quiet, peaceful, and actually laughed. It wasn't bitterness anymore. It was relief. For once, I wasn't paying for someone else's future. I was finally living mine. And as I locked my phone and walked outside, I thought, I'm not angry anymore. Just grateful I found out in time. But peace never lasts long when lies are still floating around. The smear campaign was still spreading. Twisted stories, half-truths, screenshots out of context. Jenna and Mia were doubling down, playing victims to anyone who would listen. Normally, I would have ignored it. But this time? Number. They wanted to drag my name through the mud? Fine. I'd give them the truth. Loud, clear, and undeniable. So one Friday night, I sat down at my desk with my laptop, opened a new post, and started typing. I didn't rant or insult. I wrote it like a report. Calm, factual, every word backed with proof. I included screenshots of tuition payments, car receipts, grocery bills, and even the emails from Mia's school, showing she'd listed only Jenna and Brian for the graduation ceremony. I explained how I'd raised her, paid her way through school, and then got erased from her thank you speech. Then came the real twist, the part they didn't see coming. I attached screenshots of the messages from Brian's sister, showing their little plan to reunite after I'd finished paying for everything. Her words were plain as day. Jenna said once Mia graduates, she's done with you. She and Brian were already talking about moving in together. I didn't need to exaggerate. The truth was cruel enough on its own. I ended the post with one line. I didn't abandon anyone. I stopped paying to be disrespected. Then I hit post. For a while, nothing happened. I shut the laptop, made coffee, and turned on the TV. But within an hour, my phone started buzzing nonstop. Notifications, messages, calls. It was blowing up. By morning, the post had spread everywhere. Friends, relatives, co-workers, even old classmates were sharing it. The reaction was immediate and brutal. People were horrified at how much I'd paid. Over 10 years of bills, tuition, food, everything, and how easily I'd been replaced. Others couldn't believe Jenna and Mia had tried to make me look like the villain while planning to walk back into Brian's arms. Comments poured in. She used you. You're better off. That girl's not ready for law school. She's ready for court. It snowballed fast. By the end of the day, the post had thousands of views and shares. Jenna's social media went private within hours. Mia tried to defend herself at first, posting some vague quote about bitter people twisting stories, but it backfired immediately. People dug through her old posts, found the thanks dad for everything photo with Brian, and started calling her out in the comments. You mean the dad who didn't pay a dime? Girl, he wasn't even there when you were 10. The internet can be cruel, but for once it was on my side. Within days, everything started crumbling for them. Jenna's friends, mostly other moms she gossiped with, stopped replying to her messages. A few of them even left public comments under her old posts, saying they'd had no idea what kind of person she really was. Mia, meanwhile, didn't even graduate. The university barred her from walking or being officially recognized because the tuition balance wasn't cleared. Her name wasn't on the program, and she didn't get the diploma either. She and Jenna tried to negotiate with the school, but policy was policy. No payment, no graduation. She took on part-time jobs at different stores just to get by. Cashier at a clothing shop during the day, barista in the evenings. Every time someone recognized her name, she'd get that awkward stare. Her best dad ever, Brian, disappeared again, leaving her and Jenna to fend for themselves. And the cherry on top? A neighbor told me Jenna was trying to move in with her sister, but her sister refused. Said she didn't want drama under her roof. I didn't gloat. I didn't text. I didn't even block them. I just watched from a distance quietly. The world was doing all the work for me. Jenna and Mia had spent years pretending I didn't exist. Now the entire community knew who I really was, the man who gave everything and got erased in return. And as for them, they were finally living in the shadow they'd created. No degree, no friends, no backup plan, just silence. I closed my laptop, leaned back, and took a deep breath. For once, there was no bitterness left, just satisfaction. Because sometimes revenge doesn't need yelling or fighting. It just needs facts and timing. I looked around my quiet home, the one I'd rebuilt piece by piece after the storm, and smiled. They spent years pretending I didn't exist, I said to myself. Now everyone sees them for who they really are. And the best part? I didn't have to spend a single dollar to make it happen. YouTube just dropped this new hype feature. If you're hooked on this story, smash that hype button. It tells YouTube this video deserves to blow up, and it keeps even crazier stories coming your way. I'm a 37-year-old guy who's been divorced for a year. My ex-wife, who's 36, and I have two kids, 10 and 7 years old. The kids stay with me for half the month because I have partial custody. Even though they spend a lot of time with me, I still need to pay child support for the days they're with their mom. Since I earn much more than she does, I also pay alimony on top of child support. Our divorce was far from amicable, and currently we are not on speaking terms. The decision to divorce came after numerous arguments in the latter years of our marriage, during which I felt she had become a completely different person. The tipping point was our final argument, where she yelled at me, expressing regret over our marriage. Following that incident, I made the decision to leave and subsequently filed for divorce. After our separation, she made no attempts to reconcile or even reach out to me. It's been a year since the divorce was finalized. About 6 months post-divorce, she began a new relationship, which I learned through mutual acquaintances. Initially, I felt let down by her swift move forward, yet I recognized there was little within my control to change the situation. Consequently, I chose not to address this development with her. Our interactions have been strictly limited to discussions about our children without delving into personal matters. This approach has defined our communication for the past 6 months. Despite feeling slightly wounded by her rapid progression, I acknowledged her continued dedication as a nurturing mother to our children and refrained from actions that might disrupt our family's well-being. However, a recent incident has drastically altered my perception of her character, leading me to question her suitability as a parent. 10 days ago, while on a business trip, an arrangement had been made for her to bring the children to my home on the second day of my absence, aligning with the scheduled custody exchange. Before my business trip, I communicated with my ex-wife about the necessity of her caring for our children for an additional 3 days until my return. She agreed, and I have documented evidence of her consent through screenshots of our conversation. Confident in our arrangement, I proceeded with my trip without concern. However, on the evening of the second day, an unexpected call from my son revealed a distressing oversight. He inquired about my whereabouts, explaining that their mother had dropped them off at my residence, assuming I was present to receive them. Discovering I was away, they found themselves locked out, standing in the cold, having waited at the door for 15 minutes. In response, I directed them to seek temporary shelter at our neighbor's house while I attempted to address the situation. Complicating matters, our neighbors were also absent, leaving my children without immediate refuge in the chilling weather. Our street, mostly vacant due to its novelty and the ongoing occupancy of surrounding homes, offered little solace. The only neighbors, an elderly couple living opposite us, were not at home, mirroring the deserted state of the other houses on our street. In a state of growing panic upon learning that the neighbors were unavailable, I quickly informed my son to hold on for a moment while I attempted to reach his mother. My immediate thought was to ask her to retrieve the children from my residence to prevent them from enduring the cold, especially with the risk of them catching a cold from the snow. Expecting a swift apology and her prompt action to correct the mistake, I was instead met with a response that left me in disbelief and dismay. She bluntly stated that the children were my responsibility, given that it was technically my designated time to care for them. I found myself at a loss for words, struggling to plead with her to reconsider, not for my sake, but for the well-being of our children. Her reaction was to end the call abruptly. With trembling hands, I attempted to reach out via text, hoping she might reconsider if only to ensure the safety and comfort of the children. Her reply was dismissive, citing her plans with her boyfriend and their celebration of their 8-month anniversary as her priority. By this point, more than 20 minutes had elapsed since my initial conversation with my son, cumulatively leaving them exposed to the cold for approximately 35 minutes, with no alternative shelter in sight. I had to call CPS and explain the situation to them. They were there at the location within minutes, and then they took the responsibility to drive my kids from my house to my parents' house, which is a little out of town, My kids are too young to have found their way there on their own, and they didn't know any bus routes or stuff, so they literally couldn't have gone there by themselves. My in-laws aren't alive and had passed away before my ex-wife and I even got married, and any other relatives that I had in the city, they weren't going to take care of my kids until I returned. So my parents' place was my safest bet. I also reported my ex-wife neglecting our kids and putting them in danger on purpose because by the time the cops had discovered them, they'd been sitting on the front steps of my door and were literally using my youngest son's blanket to keep themselves warm. I felt like crap. After they informed me of the state my kids were in, but felt much better after they'd been dropped off at my parents' house. They'd also placed my ex-wife under arrest for negligence within hours of my report, and I went to sleep that day, feeling vindicated as hell, knowing that my kids were safe and sound, and my ex-wife would have hell to pay once I came back. Immediately after ensuring my children were safe, I contacted my attorney to initiate proceedings for full custody, a move that would also terminate child support payments. This decision was driven by a desire to ensure the safety and well-being of my children, and admittedly, to address the negligence displayed by their mother in this incident. In the days following the event, my ex-wife and I did not communicate until I returned from my business trip. My first priority upon return was to visit my children. During our reunion, I apologized for the distress caused by my absence and assured them of my intent to prevent such an occurrence in the future by seeking full custody. This would guarantee their constant safety and presence with me. The reaction from my eldest child to this news was a mixture of relief and happiness, which was unsettling for me. I had always believed their mother to be competent in her role, despite our differences. Her actions during our marriage had convinced me of her dedication to our children's well-being, making this recent lapse all the more surprising and concerning. And even after our divorce, the kids didn't give me any reason to be concerned about how life was for them with their mother. However, after I asked why he was so happy about not having to live with his mom anymore, my son began to hesitate and said that his mom had forbidden him from talking to me about these things. I didn't like the sound of that, so I pressed on, and eventually he told me that for so long he and his brother had been having a really hard time at their mom's place because she was very strict and stringent. All of a sudden, she wouldn't allow them to have any candy or junk while they were there for half of the month, and they were forced to eat the same food every day. The kind of food that my kids referred to as sick food. Not because it's sick and a call away, but because it's what I feed them when they're sick and need to avoid anything that's too rich or heavy for their diet. So they'd be forced to eat tasteless porridge and some form of oats every single day for lunch and dinner. Only on the weekends they'd get something different, but even that would just be toast with some dip. Their mother claimed that this was all for their good health, but I don't understand how a total lack of meat and vegetables in their diet for half of the month was going to make them healthier. I also fail to understand why exactly she'd forbidden them from having candy and junk food. Recognizing the importance of a balanced approach to parenting, I've always believed that occasional indulgences, such as treats, won't adversely affect my children's health. In fact, I argue that this moderation prevents the development of an unhealthy relationship with food, potentially averting future food-related issues. This philosophy extends beyond diet to include social and personal freedoms that contribute to a child's overall well-being and development. During our recent conversations, my children shared insights into their life at their mother's home that raised concerns. They described a restrictive environment where their activities were limited to school attendance with no allowance for social engagements, like having friends over or attending sleepovers. Such opportunities were exclusively available during their stays with me. Additionally, they recounted experiences of shopping trips where their wishes for simple pleasures like toys, books, clothes, or even chicken nuggets were consistently denied. Their mother's focus was solely on her necessities, expecting the children to remain silent and unobtrusive, with any deviation from this expectation met with reprimands. Most troubling was the revelation that they had been instructed not to communicate these experiences to me, explaining their prolonged silence on these matters. This directive from their mother not only restricted their freedom of expression, but also prevented me from fully understanding their living conditions and the challenges they faced while in her care. So finally, I decided to talk to my ex-wife and find out why she had been doing this to our kids. When I called her to confront her, she started off by yelling at me for calling the cops on her and reporting her. But I ignored all of that and asked her about everything that our kids have complained about. None of it added up because I paid her enough in child support to be able to afford the things my kids wanted. And yet they were complaining about never having enough not to eat, not to wear, and not even to play with. So I asked her what was going on, and she told me that she was in between jobs right now and couldn't afford to spend everything on the kids. That still didn't make sense because I was paying her alimony too, so she could maintain her standard of living. I have a decent income, and the alimony combined with the child support is also a substantial amount which she can easily live off without having to compromise our kids' standard of life. I argued with her for a while until she finally snapped and said that it wasn't any of my business what she did with her money, and then disconnected the call. Now that robbed me the wrong way, because this wasn't her money at all. It was my money that I was sending her for my kids. And she was supposed to use the child support for our kids and not for herself. I could tell that she'd been lying. So my lawyer and I decided that along with filing for full custody, we would also sue her for child abuse and neglect, since that was clearly what was happening here. The situation escalated when my ex-wife faced legal repercussions for her decision to leave our children outside in the cold, an action that led to a criminal case against her. This incident, combined with my decision to pursue full custody, underscored the severity of her actions. It's been approximately 1.5 weeks since these events unfolded. Her reaction came only after being formally notified of the legal actions against her. She reached out displaying emotional distress, which I perceived as insincere. Throughout our separation and subsequent interactions, she had not once initiated contact to inquire about the welfare of our children or express a desire to mend our fractured relationship. Her sudden display of concern seemed to be triggered not by a genuine interest in the children's well-being, but rather by the realization that she was at risk of losing both custody and the financial support that accompanied it. During our conversation, she attempted to downplay her actions as a misguided attempt to provoke me, even suggesting a plan to regain custody of the children. However, her appeals and emotional pleas did not sway my resolve. I expressed my lack of trust in her capability to safely and responsibly care for our children, given her recent behavior and the ongoing legal issues. Her argument then shifted towards a plea of financial necessity, attributing her reliance on child support to her current unemployment. This further reinforced my concerns about her motivations for wanting to maintain custody, highlighting the complex interplay of financial dependence, parental responsibility, and the well-being of our children in this dispute. And that confirmed what I already believed, that she wanted custody of our kids for the child support and not because she actually loved them. I was already disgusted by that, and I was about to hang up when I heard her friend and attorney yelling at her about how she needed to forget about the money from the child support and talk to me about the lawsuit instead. Then my ex-wife switched to talking about that instead and said that I shouldn't be suing her for something so petty because she already had a lot on her plate. She was already being prosecuted for the incident that took place while I was away, and I was also fighting her for custody. And now on top of all of that, I decided to add more to her troubles with the child protection lawsuit. She said that none of this was fair to her and claimed that I was doing this on purpose to hurt her because she had moved on in life, and I hadn't. I literally laughed at how delusional that statement was, and then disconnected the call because there was no point in trying to argue with her. I didn't speak to her after that and focused on work and taking care of my kids. I knew already that my kids weren't going to go back to living with their mother at any cost, and I wasn't going to continue the child support payments either. So I've been looking for babysitters for when I'm away at work, and they need to be looked after. As of now, my mom's living with me so she can take care of the kids until I come back from work. Yesterday, I received a call from my mom while I was at work where she told me to hurry back home because my ex-wife was at the door and was refusing to leave without speaking to me. I couldn't just come back home because I was in the middle of a workday and I had a meeting to attend. So I told her to put her on the phone with me. In response to her continuous and distressing behavior, I conveyed to my ex-wife the serious implications of her actions, including the potential need for a restraining order if her erratic behavior persisted. This, I warned, would only exacerbate her current predicaments. However, rather than addressing these concerns, she shifted the conversation to lament how my actions were purportedly devastating her life, appealing for compassion and urging me to retract the lawsuit to alleviate her mental and emotional strain. She outlined the overwhelming pressure she faced from the criminal charges, the impending custody battle, and the lawsuit, all converging within the same time frame. Meanwhile, I had already made arrangements with my workplace to accommodate the need for intermittent absences due to court appearances, ensuring that my professional responsibilities would remain unaffected. Her financial and time constraints, particularly her current unemployment, were highlighted as major obstacles in managing the legal challenges. She argued that her inability to afford legal representation and the requirement to attend court proceedings were unduly burdensome. Yet, when she dismissed my plea for assistance during the incident with our children, citing it as solely my problem, I found myself echoing her words back to her in our current situation. I reminded her that the consequences she now faced were the result of her own actions, thereby making it her responsibility to navigate these challenges. much like she insisted I do in our prior encounter. I'll concede that I said that purely out of spite, but I really think that it was mostly because of how she'd been treating me and the kids ever since the divorce. And I couldn't just let it slide. Every single time she had alimony payments coming in monthly, along with the child support, and in spite of that, she deprived my children of a good home environment and scared them into not telling me anything about it as well. I think I've been totally fair in suing her, as well as trying to get full custody because she'd been selfish, dishonest, and a failure of being a mother. So my being rude to her should have been the least of her concerns. But she just started bawling on the call like a baby and said that I was being horrible to her. She claimed that it was bad enough that she was going to lose custody of her kids. She didn't even think she stood a chance, given the circumstances. But on top of that, I was going to go the extra mile to sue her as well. And she said that it wasn't fair. I've been feeling really guilty about it, even though I did tell her on the call that there was nothing that could be done. Now, AITA for suing my ex-wife for neglecting our kids, even though she was already facing charges and also had a custody case to deal with. Update 1. Hi everyone, 2 days have passed since I posted here, and I have come to the conclusion that there's no reason for me to feel guilty. Thanks to you guys and also my parents, who convinced me that I was doing the right thing. I'm sure now that the funds that I've been sending her for the kids were not being used for them in the slightest, and she was spending it all on herself. She and I don't follow each other on social media, and I'm not exactly in touch with our common friends on a regular basis because of my work. But after I posted here and talked to my parents about this, I decided to discuss this with a couple of my friends as well. The insights shared by my children hinted at a lifestyle incongruent with the financial struggles my ex-wife professed. Observing her frequent absences, particularly during weekends and some nights, raised questions about her true financial situation and priorities. The children's revelation that she left them with neighbors or relatives while she was out further fueled my suspicion. Their hesitance to discuss these matters openly suggested they might have been instructed to keep these details from me, hinting at a deliberate effort to obscure her lifestyle and activities. Recognizing the potential significance of this information, I made the difficult decision to set aside my principles regarding respect for her privacy post-divorce. Initially, I had unfollowed her on social media to honor her autonomy and space, a decision I began to question in light of recent developments. Resorting to indirect methods, I accessed her social media profiles through a friend's account. What I discovered starkly contrasted with the image of financial hardship she presented. Her profiles were laden with photographs showcasing a vibrant social life. Parties at clubs, beach outings, and romantic vacations with her boyfriend, all seeming to involve significant expenditure. These posts contradicted the narrative of financial distress and inability to afford legal representation she communicated to me. This revelation prompted a reevaluation of my understanding of her situation, suggesting that her claims of financial struggle might not fully reflect her actual financial status and lifestyle choices. It looked nothing short of a social media influencer's feed, and I was shocked because from whatever she told me, I thought that she'd been struggling with money and all her bills, but it didn't show on her social media or in her lifestyle at all. My friends told me that they didn't talk about this to me because they didn't think it was their place to say anything or make a comment. And I don't blame them because I think I sort of distanced myself from all my old friends. After the divorce, my ex-wife and I had been dating since college, and all our common friends were from college, so whenever I'd hear from them, I'd be reminded of her, which is why I pushed everyone away. And that clearly didn't work out well for me, but I'm getting back to them now anyway. Now I know that the whole thing was a lie, and she just wanted more and more money out of me. She was also willing to force-feed our kids absolute crap and treat them badly just so she could save money instead of spending it on them like a total miser. I don't feel even an ounce of guilt anymore because she totally deserves everything awful that's happening to her right now. She's a horrible human being, and I'm no longer going to let myself feel bad for her anymore. Not after what I found out just now. Update 2. Hi folks, thank you for all the comments on the post, and also the updates. I'm very thankful for it. My ex-wife and I are currently in the middle of the lawsuit, and we have our second hearing scheduled for the day after tomorrow. She gave up on the custody battle pretty quickly and said that she was willing to terminate her parental rights because she couldn't afford to pay her lawyer for all 3 cases. So now the kids are fully under my custody, and I can finally breathe freely without worrying about what's going to happen. As for the lawsuit, it's pretty much going in my favor. The unexpected contact from my ex-wife's boyfriend added another layer to the unfolding situation. His intention might have been to garner my sympathy by sharing their difficulties, yet it had the opposite effect, heightening my frustrations. This interaction underscored my perception that my ex-wife was prioritizing her relatively new relationship over the well-being and needs of our children. a stance I found deeply troubling. The decision to record the call, made in anticipation of potential threats, proved insightful as it revealed their appeal for me to halt the legal actions. According to him, my ex-wife had been exerting considerable effort to sustain herself, our children, and him through freelance work, a field known for its unpredictability and financial instability. This portrayal of diligence and struggle, however, starkly contrasted with the lifestyle depicted on her social media accounts, which showcased frequent social activities and expensive leisure pursuits. When confronted with the discrepancy between claimed financial hardship and visible expenditure on leisure and trips, he could not provide a satisfactory explanation, only suggesting that these displays were not reflective of their actual financial situation. Furthermore, his admission that my ex-wife was also financially supporting his education, allegedly from her savings, introduced additional complexities to their claim of financial distress. This conversation not only failed to elicit my sympathy, but also reinforced my concerns about my ex-wife's priorities and the authenticity of her claims regarding her financial struggles. The disparity between the narrative presented to me and the evidence of their lifestyle choices has only solidified my resolve to pursue the best interests of our children through the legal proceedings already underway. When I heard that, I hung up and blocked him, because now everything was finally adding up where all the money was going and why my children were being deprived of a good life, even though I'd been paying child support regularly. She's going to have to pay for this in court, and I'll make sure of it. Update 3. Hey guys, long time no see. Thank you for all the concern and for asking about me. I'm doing a lot better now, and so are the kids. They seem very happy here with me and hardly ever talk about their mother now. She lost the case, of course, and now she owes me a ton of money so she can no longer fool around with her boyfriend and her friends, which was weird anyway, because this is a woman in her late 30s with 2 kids, so I don't even know what she was thinking. Blowing all her money at clubs and on vacations. It was ridiculous, but I have nothing to do with her anymore now. Once again, thank you for all the love and support. This story is titled, "We're Taking Your Office Space," Dad said over dinner. I nodded and said, "Okay, I'll clear it out tomorrow." The next morning, I found a new apartment without telling them. And now they are calling me nonstop because they cannot afford to live without my help. Hey everyone! Before we jump into today's video, I need your help. We've noticed the channel is losing some traction, and subscribing is one of the best ways you can support us. It's quick, free, and it helps us keep bringing you awesome content. Your support means the world. Let's keep this channel growing together. Thanks so much. Now let's start the video. "We're taking your office space," my old man announced over dinner last night. Not asked, told. I was halfway through my burger when he dropped it like he was commenting on the fucking weather. My stomach knotted up, but I forced this pathetic fake smile and muttered, "Fine, whatever, I'll clear it out tomorrow." In my head, though, I was thinking, are you serious with this shit again? See, 26 male, still living at home after getting my CS degree because Bay Area rent is insane, and I've been trying to build up my web development business. That office space wasn't just a room. It was the converted garage where I've been working 60-hour weeks for the past 3 years, landing clients and building my portfolio while paying $850 a month rent to my parents, plus utilities, plus groceries half the time. My dickhead brother Ethan, 19 male, sat across from me with his smug little smirk, golden child extraordinaire, failed out of community college twice, but somehow mom and dad still think the sun shines out of his ass. He wanted my workspace for his streaming career, which consists of him playing Valorant badly for an audience of maybe 12 people. Ethan needs the space for his equipment, mom chimed in, not even looking up from her phone. His followers are really growing, and this could be his big break. Yeah, all 38 of them. Meanwhile, I just landed a $5,000 contract last month that helped pay for the new water heater when theirs crapped out during Christmas. Not that anyone bothered to say thanks. Plus, Dad added through a mouthful of fries, "Your brother needs privacy. The living room isn't cutting it. Privacy. For the kid who hadn't contributed a single fucking dollar to this household." Meanwhile, I've been the one re-shingling the roof last summer, fixing mom's car when it broke down, and upgrading the home network when Dad kept bitching about his Netflix buffering. I've dumped at least $9,000 into this place over the past year, and they act like I'm some random tenant they're doing a favor. Ethan kept grinning wider, like he'd won something. That's how it's always been. Him taking, me giving. Since we were kids, he was the special one who needed extra help, extra attention, extra everything. When I made honor roll, they nodded. When he passed a class with a C-, they took him out for ice cream. I stabbed at my fries, ketchup splattering on the tablecloth. Mom frowned at the mess, but Honestly, I was too pissed to care. The garage was my space, my sanctuary from their bullshit. But clearly, I wasn't even entitled to that. You can set up in the basement, Dad offered, like he was being generous. The fucking basement. With its half-finished walls, concrete floor, and that persistent mildew smell. Where the Wi-Fi barely reaches and the ceiling is so low I have to hunch. Where they store all their crap. But I just nodded because what else could I do? I've spent my whole life being reasonable while they catered to Ethan's every whim. That night, I sat in my garage office, staring at the setup I'd built. The custom desk I'd made from reclaimed wood, the perfect cable management, the sound absorption panels I'd installed. 3 years of building my space, my business. And they were giving it to a teenager who couldn't even be bothered to wash his own dishes. Something inside me just snapped. I should probably back up and explain the Ethan situation, because it's key to understanding why this desk thing hit me so hard. From day one, this kid has been treated like he's made of glass. When we were growing up, if I got a B+, Dad would ask why it wasn't an A. If Ethan got a C-, they'd celebrate like he'd won a Nobel Prize. He's just wired differently, Mom would say. He needs more support. Meanwhile, I was the responsible one who had his shit together. Translation: the kid they didn't have to worry about, so they didn't. When I was 16, I saved for 6 months to buy my first laptop. Ethan got the newest iPhone for his 12th birthday because all his friends had one. I busted my ass for a scholarship to state. Ethan flunked out of community college, and they blamed his professors for not understanding his learning style, then paid for him to try again at a different school, which he also flunked out of. When I moved back home after graduation, the deal was I'd pay rent and stay until I got established. Reasonable. But somehow I also became the in-house tech support, handyman, and emergency fund. Last year, the furnace died during the coldest week of January. Repair bill, $2,700. Guess whose savings paid for it? Not my parents, who both work decent jobs. Definitely not Ethan, who was between opportunities. Me, with the promise they'd pay me back soon. Still waiting on that. 3 months ago, Dad's car needed a new transmission. $1,800 from my client funds. Last summer, I spent 2 weeks replacing the deck that was rotting through, paid for the materials, did the labor, while Ethan played video games inside. When they had friends over to see the new deck, Dad joked, "Yeah, got it done for cheap." Never mentioned I built the damn thing. Every time I try to bring this stuff up, Mom gets teary and Dad gets defensive. Family helps family, he'll say. But it only ever seems to go one direction. So yeah, the garage workspace meant a lot to me. It was the one place in this house that was mine, where I built something from nothing. And now they were handing it to Ethan, because his streaming career might take off someday. That night, I couldn't sleep. Just lay there cataloging every time they'd chosen him over me. Every time they'd taken from me to give to him. Every time I'd swallowed my anger and played along. Not anymore. The next morning, I skipped the usual family breakfast. Couldn't stand to look at Ethan's smug face or listen to Mom talk about how they'd redecorate my workspace for him. Instead, I sat in my car in the driveway, scrolling apartment listings. I'd been saving for my own place, but the way Bay Area rent is, I figured I needed at least another year. But fuck it. I'd live on ramen if I had to. Found a studio in Oakland, 500 square feet, dated kitchen, but it had a decent-sized alcove perfect for my desk setup. $1,850 a month, which was actually below market for anything not actively on fire. The landlord wanted first, last, and security. $5,550 up front. I had $8,200 saved. It would be tight, but doable. I fired off an email with my credit score and income verification from my business. Got a response within an hour. Available now. Can you come see it this afternoon? Hell yes, I could. The place was exactly as advertised. Small, slightly worn around the edges, but clean. Big windows, no mildew smell, no Ethan, no parents acting like every dollar I earned belonged to the family fund, which somehow always got spent on whatever Ethan wanted. I'll take it, I told the landlord, a chill older lady named Janet who said she preferred renting to quiet professionals over party kids. Signed the paperwork on the spot, paid the deposit, got the keys. Holy shit, just like that, I had my escape plan. Driving home, I felt this weird mix of triumph and fury. I should have done this years ago. Instead, I'd been bankrolling a family that saw me as nothing but a resource to exploit. Well, resources can dry up. I didn't tell them about the apartment. Instead, when Mom texted asking if I could pick up groceries on the way home, I wrote back, sure, like nothing had changed. But I didn't buy the usual $200 worth. Just milk and bread. The bare minimum. Where's the rest? She asked when I walked in with one sad little bag. Budget's tight this month, I said, shrugging. Figured we could all chip in. The look on her face. Like I'd suggested we start eating the furniture. But you always get the groceries on Tuesdays. Yeah, well, things change. Dad was in the garage, my garage, measuring for Ethan's new streaming desk they were planning to buy. A $600 gaming setup they'd somehow find money for, despite claiming poverty whenever I mentioned the $4,500 they owed me. Hey, the printer's jammed again, he called out when he saw me. Can you take a look? Normally, I'd drop everything to fix it. 20 minutes of my life to extract whatever paper Ethan had crammed in there wrong. Not today. Can't, I said. Client deadline. Can it wait? Your mother needs to print some work stuff. Nope. Bills to pay. I walked past him to my soon-to-be ex-office and started casually sorting through my things. Not packing, not obviously, but taking inventory. That night, the printer remained jammed. Mom had to go to Kinko's. Dad grumbled about family responsibilities. I just worked on my laptop, wireless headphones on, a small smile playing at my lips. The next day, Ethan cornered me in the kitchen. Dude, can you drive me to Brandon's? My car's making that noise again. His car. Actually, my old Honda that I'd fixed up and stupidly sold to him for half its value when he got his license, which he hadn't maintained once. Take the bus, I said, not looking up from my coffee. The bus? It's like 5 miles. Sounds like a personal problem. He stormed off to whine to Mom. 10 minutes later, she appeared. That disappointed look she'd perfected. Ryan, your brother needs a ride. It would only take 20 minutes. I've got work. You're just sitting there drinking coffee. Yeah, on my break. From work. That pays my bills. And yours, apparently. Her mouth opened, then closed. She wasn't used to pushback from me. Small rebellions. But man, they felt good. By day 3 of Operation Take Back My Life, cracks were showing in the family system. The lawn, which I'd mowed every Sunday since high school, was getting shaggy. The dishes were piling up in the sink. Usually I loaded the dishwasher without being asked. The Wi-Fi kept dropping because I hadn't reset the router in the usual spots where it got glitchy. Little things. Things they'd taken for granted that I would handle. Dad finally approached me Thursday night, awkwardly hovering in my doorway. So, the lawn's getting kind of out of control. I glanced up from my laptop. Yep, sure is. I figured you were going to mow it last weekend. Nah. A long pause. Are you going to mow it this weekend? Wasn't planning on it. Back to my screen. He shifted uncomfortably. Is something wrong, Ryan? You seem off lately. That was Rich. 3 years of using me as their personal handyman, ATM, and emotional support human, and now he notices something's off. Just busy with work, I said blandly. Well, we're family. We all need to pitch in. I finally looked up at him, letting the words hang there. We all need to pitch in. When was the last time Ethan had pitched in with anything? When had Dad last fixed something instead of waiting for me to do it? Sure, I said finally. I'll add it to the list. I didn't specify what list, but I was definitely keeping score. The next morning, I woke up to raised voices downstairs. Peeked over the banister to see Ethan and Dad arguing about the yard. Why do I have to do it? That's Ryan's job. Your brother's busy. Just do it this once. But I have a stream scheduled. My followers are expecting me. All 38 of them, I thought. Then reschedule it. Jesus Christ, Ethan. It's just lawn mowing. It was like watching a nature documentary. The parasitic relationship disturbed, the host organism finally pushing back against the parasite. Fascinating. I slipped back to my room, started packing another box. I'd been slowly moving my valuables out each day while they were busy arguing about chores. The studio apartment was gradually filling up with my stuff, but the real bombshell dropped that afternoon. I was on a client call when Dad knocked on my door, his face a weird mix of defensive and guilty. Hey, quick thing, he said when I finished. I sold your workbench. Guy's picking it up tomorrow. Got $300 for it. My custom workbench. The one I'd built from scratch, with the perfect height for my ergonomic setup, the built-in cable management, the adjustable monitor arms. You sold my property without asking me? My voice was dangerously calm. Well, Ethan needs a proper streaming desk. And since you're moving to the basement anyway, so you just decided my stuff was yours to sell. He had the grace to look embarrassed. I figured you'd be fine with it. It's for your brother's career. His career, I repeated flatly. Right. Look, we'll split it with you. You can have $100, a third, of the money, for my bench, that I built, with my own hands and my own money. Keep it, I said, turning back to my computer. Consider it my investment in the bank of Ethan. Seems to be the only place my money goes around here anyway. He left, confused, but relieved I hadn't pushed back harder. As soon as the door closed, I booked a U-Haul for Saturday morning. By Friday, I'd moved about 70% of my belongings to the new apartment. Nothing obvious. TV still in place, bed still made, but clothes, important documents, my good computing equipment, all quietly relocated while they went about their days. The family dynamic was deteriorating fast. Ethan had half-assed the lawn, leaving patches uncut and the edges looking like hell. Dad had attempted to fix the printer, only to break it worse. Mom was getting increasingly snippy about the state of the house. I moved through it all like a ghost, doing the bare minimum. Made my own meals. Cleaned only my own dishes. When the internet went down for the third time that week and Mom called out, "Ryan, the Wi-Fi's acting up again," I just called back, "Try unplugging it." Small satisfactions. Friday night, Dad cornered me again. "Look, about your workbench. If you really want to keep it, I can call the guy back. Too little, too late. Don't bother. Ethan's pretty excited about setting up the garage. Maybe you could help him get everything arranged this weekend? You know, make it a brother thing?" I almost laughed in his face. A brother thing? After they'd taken my space, tried to sell my property, and treated me like the help for years? "I've got plans," I said. "What plans?" "My plans." I brushed past him, headed to my room to pack the last essentials. He followed me up, hovering anxiously. "Ryan, what's going on with you lately? Your mother's worried." Of course, not I'm worried, but your mother's worried. Classic dad deflection. "Nothing's going on," I said, carefully neutral. "Just establishing some boundaries." Boundaries? We're family. And there it was. The magic word that was supposed to excuse everything. Family. The get-out-of-jail-free card they played whenever they wanted something from me. "Yes," I agreed. "We are family." Which is why it's interesting that when Ethan wants something, it's, "We need to support each other." But when I need something, it's, "You're an adult. Figure it out." Dad's face flushed. "That's not fair. We've supported you plenty. Name one time in the last year you've helped me with anything. One time you've put my needs first." He opened his mouth, then closed it, then tried again. "We let you live here, don't we? I pay rent. $850 a month, plus utilities, plus groceries half the time, plus every emergency repair in this house. I'm not living here, Dad. I'm subsidizing all of you. That's ridiculous. You're twisting things." "Am I? How much have I spent fixing this place up in the last year? The furnace, the deck, your transmission? Over $8,000. How much has Ethan contributed? Ever?" He didn't have an answer for that. "And now you're taking my workspace, the one place in this house that's actually mine, and giving it to him, then selling my property without asking. So tell me again how this is a two-way street." Dad's expression cycled through anger, defensiveness, and finally, uncomfortable realization. "We didn't think—" "No," I cut him off. "You didn't?" I turned back to my closet, started pulling out the last of my clothes, not bothering to hide it now. "What are you doing?" Dad asked, his voice suddenly uncertain. "Packing." "For what?" I stopped, looked him dead in the eye. "I'm moving out. Tomorrow." The shock on his face would have been comical if it wasn't so pathetic. "Moving out? Where? Why didn't you tell us?" "Signed a lease last week, and I'm telling you now." "But the basement. We figured that I'd keep bankrolling this household while you guys kept taking?" "Yeah, that was the plan, wasn't it?" He didn't deny it, which told me everything. "Ryan, let's talk about this. Your mother will be upset." "I'm sure she will be. The ATM is leaving." He left, shell-shocked, and I heard the murmur of urgent voices downstairs. I kept packing, methodical and calm. The storm was coming, and for once, I wasn't going to be the one cleaning up after it. Saturday morning, U-Haul parked conspicuously in the driveway. Me carrying out the last of my boxes while the family watched in various states of distress. Mom was crying, of course. Her go-to manipulation tactic. "I don't understand why you're doing this. Why not talk to us first? Like you talked to me before deciding to take my workspace." I loaded another box, not breaking rhythm. "That's different." Ethan needed. Ethan always needs. Ethan always gets. I'm just finally taking myself out of the equation. Dad was alternating between anger and bargaining. "This is childish, Ryan. Running away because you didn't get your way." "Not running away," I corrected, hefting my computer tower into the truck. "Moving on. There's a difference." Ethan was sulking on the porch, his future streaming career suddenly in jeopardy, without me there to set up his equipment and troubleshoot his technical problems. "What about my desk?" he whined. "Dad already sold yours." "Sounds like a you problem," I replied, echoing his own favorite phrase back at him. Mom followed me back into the house, still sniffling. I just don't understand where this is coming from. We're family. I stopped, set down the box I was carrying, and faced her directly. Let me make it crystal clear then. I walked to the kitchen, grabbed a marker from the drawer, and a piece of paper from the printer they still hadn't fixed. In large letters, I wrote, Ryan's contributions. Last 12 months. Rent paid, $10,200. Utilities, approximately $1,800. Groceries, approximately $4,800. Furnace repair, $2,700. Dad's transmission, $1,800. Deck rebuild, $1,100 plus 80 hours labor. Regular home maintenance, $2,400 approximately. Tech support, countless hours. Total, $24,800 plus Ethan's contributions. Zero attitude, priceless. I stuck it to the fridge with a magnet. That's where this is coming from. Mom stared at the list, her tears suddenly drying up. It hasn't been that much. Check my bank statements. I kept records. Dad had wandered in and was reading over her shoulder, his face draining of color. The furnace wasn't that expensive, he protested weakly. $2,700. I have the receipt. You said you'd pay me back when things ease up. That was 11 months ago. They exchanged uncomfortable glances. We've been meaning to, Mom started. Save it, I cut her off. I don't even care about the money anymore. What I care about is that I've been keeping this household afloat for years, and you still treat me like I'm the selfish one when I need something. You still put Ethan first every time, even though he contributes nothing. He's younger, Dad tried. He's still finding his way. He's 19. I was working 2 jobs at 19, paying for my own car, my own phone, my own everything. That's because you were more responsible. Mom's voice trailed off as she realized what she was admitting. Right. I was responsible, so you burdened me with everything. He's irresponsible, so you burden him with nothing. And now, you're genuinely shocked that I'm leaving. I picked up my box again. Ryan, wait, Dad said, his voice no longer angry but genuinely alarmed. Let's figure this out. We can make this right. Too late. I signed a lease, paid the deposit. My name's off the utilities here as of Monday. That landed like a bomb. What do you mean your name's off the utilities? Mom asked. I mean I've been paying the internet, the streaming services, and half the power bill. I called yesterday and had everything transferred or canceled. You've got about 48 hours to figure out new arrangements. Ethan appeared in the doorway, finally catching on that his comfortable life was about to change dramatically. You can't just leave, he protested. Who's going to fix the printer or the Wi-Fi when it goes down? I couldn't help but laugh. That's your first concern, not how will we pay the bills, but who's going to fix my shit for free? I brushed past him, carried the box to the truck. Mom followed me out, now in full panic mode. Ryan, please. We didn't realize how much you were doing. We can work something out. Your father and I will pay you back. With what money? You guys live paycheck to paycheck. We'll figure it out. Please, just don't do this. I closed the U-Haul's rear door, locked it. I've already done it. I'm not asking for the money back. I'm not even asking for an apology, though that would have been nice. I'm just done being the family ATM. But what about Ethan? She asked, and I almost admired her dedication to keeping him at the center of everything. What about him? He's an adult. Let him get a job. He can't find anything in his field. His field? He's a college dropout who plays video games badly on the internet. That's not a field. Harsh, but true. And long overdue. Dad had stormed back inside, but now reappeared with his wallet. He pulled out 520s, his standard emergency cash. Here, he said, thrusting it at me. For the furnace. It's a start. I looked at the money, then back at him. Keep it. You're gonna need it. I climbed into the U-Haul. Mom was openly sobbing now. Dad looked shell-shocked, and Ethan was furiously texting someone, probably complaining about his terrible family. I'll call you when I'm settled, I told them, which was more courtesy than they deserved. As I pulled away, I glanced in the side mirror. They stood in the driveway looking lost. For the first time in their adult lives, they were going to have to solve their own problems. The first week in my new place was fucking blissful. No one barging in asking for tech support. No family dinner guilt trips. No expectation that I'd drop everything to chauffeur Ethan around. Just me. My reclaimed workspace set up exactly how I wanted it, and the glorious silence of a space that was 100% mine. I got a text from Mom the day after I left. The internet's not working. Did you really cancel it? I didn't respond. Let them figure it out. 3 days later, a call from Dad. The hot water heater's making a noise. YouTube has lots of DIY videos, I suggested. and hung up. By the end of the week, the texts were coming hourly. The printer still wasn't working. The yard was a jungle. None of them knew how to reset the router properly. The streaming services were gone. Ethan's career was stalled because he couldn't figure out how to set up his equipment. "Can you just come over for an hour?" Mom pleaded. "We'll pay you. My contractor rate is $95 an hour, 2-hour minimum, payment upfront," I replied. That shut her up for a while. But the following Tuesday, exactly 10 days after I moved out, the real crisis hit. I got a panicked call from Dad at 8 a.m. "The furnace quit again! The house is freezing!" It was mid-February, temperatures in the 30s at night. "Call the HVAC company," I suggested. "They want $200 just to come out, plus parts and labor. Welcome to home ownership." "Ryan, please, we don't have that kind of money right now." Of course they didn't. They'd been counting on me to handle all that. "What about the emergency fund?" I asked, knowing full well there wasn't one. "Your mother had to use it for groceries," he admitted. Translation: they'd been living beyond their means for years, using me as the safety net. "That sounds serious," I said, trying to keep the satisfaction from my voice. "Maybe Ethan can contribute from his streaming income?" The silence on the other end was delicious. "He doesn't. That's not really..." Dad fumbled. "Not really bringing in money yet? Shocking." I let him stew for a moment, then sighed dramatically. "Text me the exact error code on the furnace display. I'll see if it's something simple." It wasn't, of course. The igniter had failed, a $95 part plus labor. But I knew it wasn't something they could fix themselves without risking bigger problems. "You've got two options," I told Dad after researching it. "Pay the HVAC company or replace the igniter yourself and risk damaging the control board, which would be another $600 repair. Can't you just come look at it?" he almost begged. "I'm in the middle of a client project with a deadline," I said, which was true. "But tell you what, if you and Ethan want to come by tonight, I'll walk you through ordering the part and show you some YouTube tutorials on how to replace it." There was a long pause. Dad, considering whether his pride was worth suffering in a cold house. "What time?" he finally asked. 7 p.m. and Dad, bring Ethan. He should learn this stuff if he's going to keep living there. That night, they both showed up at my door, looking uncomfortable. It was the first time they'd seen my new place. "It's nice," Dad offered, looking around at my perfectly arranged studio. My desk, not the one they'd sold, but a new one I'd found on Craigslist and refinished, took pride of place by the window. "Thanks. I didn't invite them to sit. Let's talk furnace." I pulled up the manual for their unit, showed them exactly which part they needed, where to order it, and how to install it. "I don't think I can do this," Dad admitted, staring at the diagram. "I definitely can't," Ethan added, not even bothering to hide his lack of interest. "Then you'll need to call the HVAC company." "Ryan, please," Dad tried one more time. "We really don't have the money right now. Couldn't you just..." "No," I said firmly. I couldn't. "But we're If you say family, I'm going to close this door right now," I warned him. "Family goes both ways. And for years, it's only gone one way with us." He swallowed whatever he was going to say. "Look," I softened slightly, "I'll make you a deal. I'll come fix the furnace this one time. But in exchange, we're going to have a serious family meeting about finances and responsibilities. All cards on the table. And Ethan starts contributing. Real contributions, not promises." Dad looked relieved. "Deal." "Absolutely." Ethan frowned. "What do you mean, contributing?" "I mean you get a job. A real one with a paycheck. You pay rent. You do chores without being nagged. You learn how to fix basic household stuff, so it doesn't all fall on Dad now that I'm gone. But my streaming is a hobby, not a career. Not yet, anyway. You can stream on your days off, just like any other hobby." He looked like he wanted to argue, but Dad shot him a warning look. "Fine," Ethan muttered. The next day, I went over and fixed their furnace. It took about an hour, start to finish. Then I called a family meeting at the kitchen table. I laid it all out, their actual expenses versus income, the reality of what it would cost to replace all the services I'd been providing for free, and a proposed budget going forward, including $250 per month rent from Ethan. "That's not fair," he protested. "I don't have any money." "That's why you'll get a job," I explained, like I was talking to a toddler. "McDonald's is hiring. So is Target. So is every warehouse in the area. Those aren't real jobs. They pay real money. Money you need." Mom looked teary again. "Ryan, he's not like you. He struggles with..." "With what, exactly?" "He's not disabled. He's not sick. He's a perfectly healthy 19-year-old who's been allowed to coast because it was easier than holding him accountable." Dad surprisingly backed me up. "Your brother's right, Ethan. Things need to change around here." The look of betrayal on Ethan's face was priceless. He wasn't used to Dad taking anyone's side but his. "This is bullshit," he declared, standing up. "I'm not getting some lame-ass job just because Ryan decided to be a dick about money." "Yes, you are," Dad said, his voice firmer than I'd heard it in years. "Or you're finding somewhere else to live." Holy shit. Actual parenting happening before my eyes. Ethan stormed out, slamming his door like the adult he definitely wasn't. "He'll calm down," Mom said, but she sounded uncertain. "And if he doesn't?" I asked. Dad sighed heavily. "Then he really will have to figure something else out. We can't keep going like this." I hadn't expected that. Maybe, just maybe, they were finally getting it. "What about you?" I asked. I meant what I said about all cards on the table. "I've been subsidizing this household for years." "That stops now." They looked at each other, then nodded slowly. "We'll figure it out," Dad said. "Get on a budget. Maybe pick up some extra shifts." "Good," I said, standing up. "I'll check in next week to see how it's going." As I headed for the door, Mom called after me. "Will you come for dinner sometimes?" "Not to fix things, just to visit." I paused. "Maybe, once you guys get your house in order." Literally and figuratively. 3 weeks later, Ethan got a job at a warehouse. Entry level, but decent pay. The look on his face the first time he had to hand over rent money to Dad was something I'll treasure forever. Dad dug out his old tools and started learning basic home repairs from YouTube. Mom set up a real budget and stuck to it. They even started paying me back for the furnace. Small amounts, but regular. And me? I'm killing it at my new place. Business is booming now that I don't have family drama eating up my mental bandwidth. I've got boundaries. I've got peace. I've got that satisfying feeling that comes from watching people finally face reality. I still go over for dinner occasionally, but now when something breaks, I don't automatically jump up to fix it. I watch as Dad and Ethan figure it out together. It took burning it all down to build something better, and I don't regret it for a second. Final update. It's been half a year since I moved out and forced my family to face reality, and the transformation is actually kind of shocking. Last weekend I stopped by for the monthly family dinner we've established. On my terms, where I'm a guest, not the household ATM repairman. The lawn was actually mowed. The kitchen sink wasn't piled with dishes. And most surprisingly, Ethan wasn't glued to his gaming setup. Turns out, the golden child learned some harsh lessons these past months. His streaming career hit a wall fast once he had to balance it with his warehouse job. No more 12-hour gaming marathons when you've got an 8-hour shift moving boxes. He bitched about it constantly at first, according to Mom, but something unexpected happened. He got promoted to shift lead last week, Dad told me proudly over pot roast. Youngest one they've ever had in that position. Ethan actually looked embarrassed by the praise, which was new. "It's not a big deal. Just means more responsibility for barely more money." "Welcome to adulthood," I said, but without the bite I would have had before. The real shocker came after dinner, when the dishwasher made a weird grinding noise mid-cycle. "Shit," Dad muttered. Then, instead of looking at me expectantly, he turned to Ethan. "Can you take a look at that tomorrow?" Probably just something caught in the filter. And Ethan just nodded, like this was normal, like he'd been handling household maintenance all along. "He's gotten pretty good with basic repairs," Mom explained, seeing my surprised face. "After you left and the toilet broke for the 3rd time, he finally took initiative." "YouTube tutorials," Ethan shrugged. "Same ones you used to watch." I almost fell out of my chair. Later, Dad walked me out to my car and awkwardly handed me an envelope. Inside was $500 cash. "It's not everything we owe you," he said quickly. "But we've been putting aside a little each month. Figured we'd start making real payments, not just token ones." I was genuinely speechless. For years, money had only flowed one direction in this family, from my pocket to theirs. This reversal felt alien. "Thanks," I finally managed. "I appreciate it." "We should have done better by you," Dad said, staring at his shoes. "I didn't realize how much we were taking advantage until you weren't there to take advantage of anymore. It's not an excuse, but I'm sorry." Again, words I never thought I'd hear. "Ethan's different too," he continued. "Having real responsibilities, earning his own money. It's been good for him. Made him grow up. Better late than never," I said, but without rancor. "Yeah." Dad hesitated, then asked, "You doing okay?" "Place working out?" "Better than okay," I told him truthfully. "Business has doubled since I moved. Turns out not having my resources drained constantly lets me focus on actually building something." He winced slightly but nodded. "You deserved better from us." As I drove home, I realized something had shifted fundamentally. My family hadn't just adjusted to my absence, they'd actually grown from it. Ethan was developing into a functioning adult. My parents were taking responsibility for their finances. And most importantly, they were finally acknowledging what they'd done. Obligatory disclaimer. Yeah, I know some of you will say I should have cut contact completely. Trust me, I considered it. But despite everything, they're still my family. I'm not saying everyone should reconcile. Some families are truly toxic beyond repair. But in my case, once they showed actual change and remorse, I decided a controlled relationship was worth trying. Your mileage may vary. The following week, I got a text from Ethan that nearly made me crash my car. Hey, got a bonus at work. Wanted to pay you back for the bike Dad sold. It was a dick move. Let me know your Venmo. I'm not making this shit up. I literally had to pull over because I thought I was hallucinating, or someone had stolen his phone. I actually checked if I was hallucinating. The golden child acknowledging a wrong and offering to make it right, without being forced. I sent him my Venmo info, half expecting nothing to come of it. 10 minutes later, $300 hit my account with the note. For the bike. Sorry it took so long. It wasn't just about the money. It was the recognition, the acknowledgement that what had happened wasn't okay. That weekend, something even weirder happened. Ethan called, not texted, actually called, and asked if I'd help him set up a basic budget spreadsheet. The warehouse is offering a 401k match, and I don't know shit about investing, but I figure I should start. I invited him over, showed him how to track expenses, explained compound interest, and set him up with some basic financial literacy resources. The entire time he paid attention, asked questions, took notes, like an actual adult human. As he was leaving, he paused at the door. Your place is really nice. Way better than that moldy basement they were gonna stick you in. Thanks. I like it. He shifted awkwardly. I was a real asshole about the garage, and a lot of other stuff. I didn't realize how much you were carrying for everyone. I hadn't expected an apology from him. Not ever, really. Water under the bridge, I said, meaning it. Mom and Dad really miss having you around, he added. Not just for fixing stuff. They actually miss you. I miss certain things too, I admitted. Not the exploitation part, but the good parts of family. He nodded, understanding. For what it's worth, I'm glad you stood up for yourself. Shit needed to change. Now, 6 months out, I can honestly say my scorched earth exit was the best thing I could have done. Not just for me, but for all of us. Mom and Dad are on a budget for the first time in their adult lives. They've started building an emergency fund. Dad's become surprisingly handy around the house. Ethan's not just working, he's thriving with actual structure and expectations. He still games and streams occasionally, but as a hobby, not a delusional career plan. He's talking about taking classes at community college again, but with a realistic plan this time. And me? I've started dating again, joined a rock climbing gym, expanded my client base. All the energy that used to go into propping up my family now goes into building my own life. I still maintain firm boundaries. I don't lend money. I don't drop everything to fix their problems. But the dynamic has completely transformed. We're slowly rebuilding a relationship based on mutual respect rather than exploitation. It's still a work in progress, but for the first time, it feels like progress is actually happening. Sometimes the kindest thing you can do for people is to stop enabling their worst behaviors. It's messy and painful, but if they're capable of growth at all, they might just thank you for it eventually. My family did, and I never saw that plot twist coming. Edit. For those asking if I'll ever fully trust them again. Probably not 100%, but I'm cautiously optimistic. Trust is earned in drops and lost in buckets, as they say. They're earning those drops back slowly. My brother knocked up my wife while carrying his kid. My dad gave them the business I built like it was nothing, so I let it crash and built one they'll never reach. Now after he ruined everything, they are begging for my help. Hey everyone! Before we jump into today's video, I need your help. We've noticed the channel is losing some traction, and subscribing is one of the best ways you can support us. It's quick, free, and it helps us keep bringing you awesome content. Your support means the world. Let's keep this channel growing together. Thanks so much. Now let's start the video. Hey, I've been debating whether to post this for a while. Not really looking for advice or anything. Just feels like I need to put it somewhere, and maybe someone's been through something similar. I'm not a writer or anything, so sorry if this gets a bit long or messy. Just trying to explain it the way it happened. So, 34 male. I was married to Hannah, 32 female, for 6 years. Together for a bit longer than that. We had a pretty normal life, or so I thought. Small apartment in the suburbs, decent jobs, weekend grocery runs, fighting over where to order takeout from, watching crime shows until one of us fell asleep. That kind of thing. It wasn't always exciting, but it felt stable, comfortable. You don't really expect things to blow up when everything seems steady. I worked for my dad's logistics company for most of my adult life, not as just another employee. I was the one that made things actually function. I handled the books, set up the online systems, dealt with all the accounting and invoicing. I even got us our first major contract. Without me, the company wouldn't be what it was. I don't say that to brag, it's just facts. Then there's Jason, my younger brother. He's 28, and he's always been the golden boy. He once borrowed my truck to help a friend move, told me it'd be back by noon. Came back 3 days later, dented, low on gas, and reeking like it hosted a circus. Didn't apologize, just said, "Stuff happens." I covered for him. Told dad it was my fault for not laying ground rules. That's who I was. The guy always fixing his mess. Should have seen it coming. You know the type. Doesn't take anything seriously. Messes around. Fails upward somehow. He's good at talking. Has that smile that makes people let things slide. My dad gave him more second chances than I can count. I always figured, hey, whatever. He's my brother, right? He'll grow up eventually. Anyway, about a year ago, Hannah told me she was pregnant. I was shocked, but in a good way. We'd talked about it before, but we weren't actively trying or anything. Still, once she said it, I was excited. I pictured the usual stuff. Setting up a nursery, baby-proofing the apartment, reading dad tips online like an idiot. I even bought a tiny beanie for the kid because it was on sale and I thought it looked cute. But after the first couple weeks, things just started to shift. She wasn't acting how I expected. I figured she'd be more excited. But instead, she got distant, cold, hard to read. I'd ask her how she was feeling and she'd just say, "Fine." I'd try to help out around the house more, and she'd act like I was annoying her. I assumed it was hormones or pregnancy stress and didn't want to make it about me, so I brushed it off. Then the phone thing started. She used to leave her phone lying around without thinking twice. Now it was like an extension of her hand, always face down. Notifications silenced. Taking calls in the other room. And when Jason came around, which started happening more often, I noticed something strange between them. Not anything obvious, just tension. The kind that makes you uncomfortable even though nothing is technically wrong. It got in my head. I'd be lying if I said it didn't. I didn't want to believe anything bad was happening, but the feeling wouldn't go away. One night, I must have sat on that porch for a solid 20 minutes, just staring at the street. My mind was blank, but buzzing at the same time. Then I realized her iPad was on the coffee table inside. Same iCloud account. I went back in, quiet, like I didn't want to alert suspicion even though I wasn't even doing anything wrong, just confirming what was already hitting me like a truck. Please be nothing. Please just be work emails or dumb Pinterest boards. It wasn't. Opened the iPad. Messages were synced. There were photos. Not those kinds of photos, but ones that still gut-punched me. A selfie of her and Jason at a coffee shop I didn't even know she liked. Another one at the park. That stupid duck pond where I took her on our second date. She looked happy in them. Relaxed. That goofy smile she always said she only made around me? Yeah, there it was. Aimed at Jason like he invented air. And then a screenshot of a flight confirmation. 2 seats. Same destination we'd been saving up for the past year. Except it was for a long weekend in November. And I wasn't invited. Just her. And Jason. When she came out of the shower, I didn't say anything. I kept quiet for 2 days. Just observing. Thinking. Watching how she acted. She kissed me goodnight like nothing was wrong. Made her tea in the morning. Smiled at me like she wasn't sleeping with my brother. After sitting on it for a couple more days, I finally said something. We were sitting on the couch, watching TV. I muted the show and looked at her. "I think we should do a DNA test once the baby's born," I said. She went dead silent for about 3 seconds. You know that silence? That eerie, TV mute, storms coming silence? Yeah. Then she exploded. "How dare you accuse me?" she screamed, like I just accused her of plotting world domination. "Do you seriously think I'd lie to you? While I'm pregnant? With your child?" I opened my mouth to respond, but nope, she was on a roll. "You don't trust me. That's what this is. You're trying to control me, and I'm done pretending this is normal. This is not okay." She started pacing, like she was building momentum. "I've been throwing up every morning, dragging myself to those awful appointments, feeling like crap every single day, and this is how you treat me." At this point, her voice was bouncing off the walls like an old-school pinball machine. "You're basically calling me a liar, a cheater, a fraud. You know what? I'm starting to think you're the one with issues. You're paranoid. You're a freak about this stuff. You sit and stew in your own thoughts until you invent some fantasy where I'm the villain and you're this poor betrayed guy." And then she dropped what she thought was her mic moment. "You just ruined this pregnancy for me. This was supposed to be a happy time. And now look at what you've done. Congratulations. You broke it. I stayed calm the whole time. When she finally paused to catch her breath, I said, if there's nothing, then what's the issue with doing a simple test? She just looked at me, stunned again, then stormed off into the bedroom. Didn't talk to me for the rest of the night. After that, things got worse. She didn't yell anymore. She just avoided. Every time I brought it up, she'd say, not this again, or why are you so obsessed with this? And then shut it down. She refused to even acknowledge Jason's name. At one point, she told me, I don't even like your brother. And I swear I almost laughed. Then, about a week later, I came home early from work. I wasn't trying to catch anything. I had a bad headache and decided to just skip the afternoon. Took the side door in, walked through the garage. That's when I heard her in the living room. She was on the phone, on speaker. She didn't hear me come in. She was pacing, talking fast, didn't notice I was standing around the corner near the stairs. She said, Mike's asking for a paternity test. He's doubting us. Then Jason's voice, crap, did you say anything? Hannah said, I panicked. I didn't know what to say. What do we do if he actually makes me take it? Jason said, he's just bluffing. Don't worry about it. Just keep acting normal. My whole chest tightened. I didn't make a sound. I backed up slowly, went out the same way I came in. I drove around for a while after that. Didn't even know where I was going. Just kept turning onto random roads until it got dark. I slept in the car that night. Didn't want to see her. Didn't want to talk. I didn't have a plan yet. But I knew I wasn't going to pretend anymore. And I definitely wasn't going to protect them. So I called Jason and told him to meet me. I didn't want to wait for a lab result to tell me what I already felt in my bones. I wanted to hear it from him, the guy who used to be my brother. So I called him up, told him to meet me near the old auto shop on Creekside. Neutral ground. Quiet, out of the way. He showed up late, wearing sunglasses like we were in some bad spy movie. I was leaning against my car, arms crossed, eyes locked on him the moment he stepped out. What's going on? He asked, trying way too hard to sound casual. You tell me. I nodded toward the bench. We both sat. Awkward silence for a second. Then I said it. What the hell are you doing sneaking around with Hannah? His face twitched. Not fear. Guilt. The kind you don't fake. We're just friends, man. He scratched the back of his neck. Classic Jason move. She's been struggling. I've been there. That's it. Coffee shop across town. The duck pond. The flight in November. I hit him with everything. One by one. That's your idea of helping? He went quiet. Real quiet. You slept with her, didn't you? I didn't need him to say it, but I wanted to hear it. He didn't look at me when he said, it was a mistake. I clenched my jaw. Sat there still as stone. You know she's pregnant, I said, voice flat. He flinched. So I'll ask you straight. Is it yours? More silence. Then he let out a breath like it weighed 10 pounds. I think so. You think? She told me it might be. And you didn't feel the need to tell me that earlier? He shook his head. I didn't know what to do, Mike. I didn't plan any of this. You just showed up, smiled, acted innocent, and kept your brother's wife while shaking his hand at dinner. He looked like he was going to cry, but I didn't care. I stood up. You're going to keep pretending this is something you tripped into? Like it was bad weather or an accident? He said nothing. You're a coward, Jason. And now you're going to be a dad to a kid you made while wrecking your own brother's life. Still nothing. Just sat there, shrinking by the second. Thanks for the confirmation, I said, and walked off. That was all I needed. I didn't yell, didn't throw a punch. I wanted truth, and I got it. There was a family event coming up, my dad's birthday. Big thing. Everyone shows up. Friends, relatives, people I haven't seen since dial-up internet. I usually dreaded those things. Too many fake hugs, too much small talk. But this time, I was actually looking forward to it. I don't know, maybe I was finally feeling good about where I stood, ready to show up and not feel like the background character in my own family. Like maybe, for once, I wasn't walking into a setup. But that peace? It didn't last long. I overheard the phone call. And man, everything flipped right there. Not in a crazy rage way, more like a switch got hit and everything just went cold. I didn't even feel angry anymore. Just done. I didn't confront her after that. I didn't slam doors or throw accusations around. I acted like everything was fine. That was probably the weirdest part. Pretending. Like I hadn't heard her say, what do we do? So I figured, what better time? If they wanted to lie to my face and act like nothing was going on, then I was going to make sure everyone got to hear the truth, and not through whispers or private messages. I wanted to say it once, clear and direct, in front of every person they cared about. So I stayed chill for the next few days. Hannah kept doing her thing. acting like nothing was wrong. She was texting a lot, glued to her phone, taking random calls outside again. I stopped asking questions. I stopped trying to have the talk. Every time she looked at me, I think she knew something had changed, but I think she convinced herself I had let it go. That's what guilt does sometimes. It makes people believe they're getting away with it because you're quiet. Jason texted me the day before the dinner asking if I'd be coming. I told him I wouldn't miss it. He sent back a thumbs up emoji. I didn't reply. Saturday came, and we drove to my parents' place together. I didn't say much. She didn't notice, or maybe she didn't want to. When we got there, everyone was there early because my mom made her famous lasagna. Jason was already there, of course. He walked up, gave me a pat on the back like he wasn't sneaking around with my wife. I gave him a look and he flinched just a little. Dinner started around 7. I sat at the far end of the table, right next to Hannah. Jason was a few seats down. My dad was at the head, smiling wide, making jokes like usual. Then it was my turn. I stood up slowly, took my time. My family quieted down like they always do when someone stands to speak. I looked at my dad first. "Happy birthday," I said. "Thanks for everything you've done. For the company. For raising us." He nodded and smiled, raised his glass. Then I turned to the rest of the table. "And since this is a family event," I said, "I just wanted to share some news." My family got quiet again. Someone joked, "Don't tell me you're moving." I ignored that. I looked right at Hannah. She froze, fork halfway to her mouth. Then I turned toward Jason, who suddenly had the fakest smile I'd ever seen. So when I stood up in front of everyone and said, "She's pregnant, but not with my child. She's pregnant with his." I wasn't guessing. I knew. And the best part? They did too. Jason's face went ghost white. Hannah looked like the floor opened beneath her. No one clapped. No one defended. Just silence. The kind that stings worse than words. Every single person went dead silent. I didn't yell. I didn't point. I just said it like a fact. Because it was. Jason's mouth opened, but no words came out. Hannah dropped her fork. My mom gasped. My dad stood up halfway, like he didn't know whether to sit back down or stop me. I looked back at my dad and said, "Thought you should know who your future heir really is." And then I sat down. I didn't wait for a reaction. I didn't stick around for the aftermath. I got up, walked into the house, grabbed my keys off the counter, and left, quietly. I found out later from my cousin that the dinner fell apart within minutes. My mom burst into tears. Jason tried to deny it, even called me paranoid. But Hannah didn't say a word, just sat there frozen, like a statue with a guilt complex. My dad ended the night early and told everyone to go home. No one clapped, no one defended them. That silence I walked away from. It followed them around like a shadow. I could still hear the shouting starting behind me as I pulled out of the driveway. That night, I drove around again, parked at this small rest area by the lake, just sat there for a while. I don't even remember what I was thinking. My brain was just blank. I wasn't even sad. It felt like I had finally finished something, like closing a book you should have stopped reading months ago. With that behind me, I drove home the next morning. When I walked in, she was already up, sitting at the table, drinking her tea like she did every morning. She didn't look shocked to see me. She didn't even look nervous. She just looked tired. That's the only way I can describe it. I dropped my keys on the counter and stood there for a second. I didn't know where to start. She finally said something first. "So, you really had to do that last night?" I let out a short laugh. Not a real one, just the kind that slips out when someone says something ridiculous. "You serious?" I said. She looked at me for the first time. "You embarrassed me, in front of your whole family." I shook my head. "No, Hannah, you did that. I just stopped covering for you." She rolled her eyes. "We could have talked in private." "We did," I said. "I asked for the test. You flipped. I asked you again, calmly, and you acted like I was insane." She went quiet again, just stared into her mug like it had answers at the bottom. I walked over and sat down across from her. "I saw the photos, Hannah. You and him at that coffee place. At the park. Our duck pond. The one I took you to when we first started dating. You looked happy in those. Way happier than you've looked with me lately. That smile you said was just for me? Guess you lent it out." I paused, then added, "And the flight confirmation. 2 tickets. Same trip we were saving up for. The one I thought we'd finally take together. Except you're going with him. November, right? Long weekend getaway? Just you and your upgrade." She didn't flinch, just sipped her tea like she was getting through something mildly inconvenient. I stepped back, shaking my head. "You were gonna let me pay the bills while you packed your bag for him. That wasn't confusion, Hannah. That was commitment. So tell me, what was the end game? Keep me around for stability while you played house with my brother on the side?" Or were you hoping I'd stay blind just long enough to help you pack your toothbrush? She finally looked at me, not guilty, not teary, just tired, like I was the one being unreasonable. It's not that simple, she said. No? Enlighten me. She set the mug down and shrugged. You were always busy, always working, always stressed. Jason, he's just easier. He listens. He makes me feel seen. I blinked. So that's it. He makes you feel seen and suddenly vows don't matter? She folded her arms. You think being reliable is enough? You show up, pay bills, do what you think a good guy should do, but you're never really here. You don't talk. You don't notice things. He does. I let out a small laugh, the kind that has zero humor in it. So you sleep with my brother because he's got better conversation skills? She didn't even flinch. It's more than that. He makes me feel wanted, like I matter. You were just stuck in routine. Jason's not afraid to take risks. He lives. I stared at her. You mean he's irresponsible, reckless? The same guy who crashed my truck, ghosted his last job, and can't hold a relationship for more than 6 months. That's your standard now? She looked down at the table. He made me feel something. You made me feel stuck. I leaned back in the chair, stared at the ceiling for a second, then locked eyes with her again. You made your choice, Hannah. You texted him while I was asleep next to you. Over and over. You planned trips with him using the money I earned. You didn't just trip and fall into this. You built it, brick by brick. She didn't deny it, just kept sitting there. Is it his kid? I asked, flat. She hesitated, then said, I don't know. That one landed. I felt it, even though I already knew. I ran a hand down my face, voice low. I built a future around this. Around you. I worked extra hours so we'd have savings for the baby. I read reviews on strollers at 1 a.m. I gave everything I had to make this life work. She looked up but didn't say a word. You didn't fall for him, Hannah. You settled for him because he was around. Because he made you feel important while I was busy doing the work that kept everything from falling apart. She said nothing. That was maybe the worst part. There was no big excuse, no fight, no regret. Just a woman who chose chaos because it gave her attention. I stood up. No need to drag it out any longer. Congrats, I said, grabbing my bag. You traded up to a guy who makes you feel alive. Let's see how that works out once the diapers start piling up. I didn't wait for a reply. She didn't offer one. I stood up, grabbed my duffel bag from behind the door where I left it the other day. Started tossing clothes in, not even folding them. Just enough to get by for a couple weeks. She watched me, but didn't stop me. Where are you going? She asked. Somewhere that isn't here. She sniffed a little, like she wanted to cry, but nothing came out. I paused at the door. I meant it when I said I wanted a test, I told her. You're gonna do it. You're not gonna ghost me on that. I deserve to know. She nodded without looking at me. Okay. I walked out and didn't look back. Not long after. I ended up at my friend's place. He's one of those people who doesn't push. He saw my face when I showed up at his door, handed me the spare key without asking anything, and just said, Couch is yours. Fridge has leftovers. Wi-Fi's on the note. That's it. Exactly what I needed. I spent the first couple days just lying there, not really doing anything. I wasn't angry. It was more like my brain was on airplane mode. The silence felt better than talking anyway. I ignored my phone most of the time. I didn't want to see texts from Hannah. I didn't want to hear from Jason. I didn't even want to talk to my mom, and we're usually close. But my dad kept calling. Same time every day. Didn't say much in the voicemails, just call me when you can. I finally picked up on the 4th day, mostly to stop the calls. He didn't waste time with small talk. Just said, you coming by the house? Like everything was fine. I said, probably not. He paused, then said, we need to talk. Just us. I could tell from his tone he wasn't calling to check in on me. So I went. Not because I wanted to hear his side, but because I needed to say mine, clearly and directly. He was in his usual chair when I walked in, reading over some paperwork like nothing had happened. I sat down across from him, didn't say anything. He looked up, nodded like I'd just walked in late from a shift. No tension, no shame. Just straight to business. Then he said, I think you need to let this go. I kept waiting for him to say, but I'm disappointed in both of them. He never did. My first thought was, let what go? I didn't even respond right away because I wanted to make sure I heard him right. He continued, there's a baby involved, and maybe things happened the wrong way, but you can't undo that now. I just blinked. I couldn't believe that was the first thing out of his mouth. He went on like he had this whole thing figured out in his head. Jason wants to do the right thing now. He's ready to step up. Maybe it's time to let him and Hannah be together, build something new, give the baby a proper family. I actually let out this dry laugh. Not because it was funny, but because I was stunned at how detached he sounded. Like we were negotiating office chairs or something, not talking about my wife cheating on me with my brother. I said, "You're serious?" And he nodded like, "Yeah, this was the logical next step." I leaned back, ran my hand over my face, and just stared at the ceiling for a second. I told him, "That's the guy you want to pass everything down to? The guy who slept with my wife behind my back and then didn't even have the balls to admit it until I exposed it at your birthday?" My dad didn't budge. He knows he messed up, but he's still your brother. He wants to make things right. That's when I realized he wasn't going to pick sides. He wasn't even going to pretend he was disappointed. He just wanted to patch it up and move on, for the sake of appearances, for the sake of the business, for family. Then came the part that really sealed it. He said, "You also need to think about the company. Clients notice things. People talk. This could hurt the business if we're not careful." I leaned forward and said, "You think clients care about family drama? They care about who gets the job done. And that's never been Jason." He looked like he wanted to argue, but he didn't. He knew I was right. All this time, I thought I was working for something real. Turns out I was just patching holes in a sinking ship. That's when I realized I wasn't angry anymore. I didn't need him to back me up. I didn't need anyone in that house to get it. They chose who they were. Now I was choosing who I'd be. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. That's what he was worried about. The image, not the betrayal. I looked at him, flat out, and said, "I'm selling my shares." His eyes widened. "What?" I repeated it, clearer this time. "I'm done. I'll talk to a lawyer. You can give Jason the keys. I want no part of this anymore. Not the company, not the family dinners, not the lies." He didn't say anything for a long minute, just looked at me like I'd said something offensive. Maybe to him I had. I don't really care, so I left. Just like that. I followed through too. Found a lawyer, told them I wanted to get out clean. Didn't care if I lost a little money in the process. I just didn't want to be tied to it anymore. The lawyer was confused at first, kept asking if I was sure. I said I was. In the middle of all that, Jason texted me. Once. Just a plain message. "Can we talk?" I didn't reply. A couple days later, he tried again. I didn't mean for things to go that far. I never wanted to hurt you. I stared at it for a bit, then locked my phone and didn't answer. There's no version of that conversation that ends with me feeling better, so what's the point? Hannah messaged me too, about a week after, said, "I know I ruined everything. I'm sorry. I don't expect you to forgive me." It didn't even make me angry. I just read it once, left it there. Some people think closure comes from a long talk and crying it out. For me, it was just silence. Not answering felt like the best thing I could have done. I didn't need her explanations. I'd already heard enough. Jason ended up running the business. Not officially, but my dad let him take over the day-to-day stuff. At first, I didn't care. Then I started hearing things through mutual contacts. Missed payments, clients walking away, drivers quitting. Word was spreading. Things weren't being handled right. Schedules were off. Mistakes were happening. I didn't cheer. I wasn't happy about it. But I wasn't sorry either. You can't run something you never respected in the first place. That company meant something to me because I helped build it. For Jason, it was just handed over. Then the call came. My dad. Middle of the week, middle of the day. No small talk, just, "You free to talk about the company?" I just sat there for a second, staring at the screen. Then I picked up. He didn't waste time. "Things are a mess. Jason's trying, but it's not working. I think we both know he's not built for this. We're bleeding clients. I need help." I didn't say anything right away. I let that hang for a second. "Help with what? Picking up the pieces?" He sighed. "You know how this business runs. You always did. I shouldn't have let things go the way they did." That part almost made me laugh. "You mean letting your golden boy run it into the ground while you pretended nothing was wrong?" He didn't argue, just said, "I'm asking you, not as your father, but as someone who knows what this company really needs." I let that sit a bit longer. Then I said, "I'm not coming back to fix what he broke. I warned you. You made your choice." He said, "So that's it?" That's just the consequence," I told him. I ended the call without yelling, without emotion, just the truth. I meant it when I walked away, and I wasn't going to be their emergency exit now that things weren't going their way. I moved, rented a small apartment in a different city, found work doing consulting for logistics firms. Not glamorous, but quiet. No office politics, no family drama, just work and peace. And that peace? Man, it felt better than anything I'd felt in years. By then, I didn't block them. I wanted that door closed, not locked. I guess part of me still wanted to know if they'd sink or swim. Not that I cared, But it's like when you walk away from a burning building. You don't want to be near it, but you still glance over your shoulder to see if it collapses. Jason tried one more time, texted me out of nowhere. I know I don't deserve it, but if you ever want to talk, I'm here. I didn't reply. I didn't even finish reading the preview in the notification. I swiped it away like junk mail. That was the last time I heard from him. But Hannah? She came back around in a way I didn't expect. It was a Thursday, late afternoon. I was in the middle of a client call when I saw her name pop up on my phone. I ignored it, obviously, but she left a voicemail, something she hadn't done the last few times. Later that night, I listened to it, just out of curiosity, I guess. Her voice was shaky. Hey, I'm not asking for anything. I just wanted you to know that Jason left. He's gone. I'm alone with the baby. I made a mistake. I know that now. You didn't deserve any of it. I wish I saw things clearly back then. Click. I sat there staring at my phone. The baby. Right. I hadn't thought about the DNA test in weeks. I never got the result. I told her to do it. She nodded. Then silence. Nothing after that. Part of me thought she never went through with it. That maybe she was just going to pretend I didn't exist, raise the baby and hope I didn't follow up. But now she wanted to talk. That night I couldn't sleep. Not because of her voicemail, but because of what it probably meant. Jason bailed. Classic. Dude couldn't even handle a 9 to 5, let alone fatherhood. Of course he left. And now she was sitting in the ruins of what they built on lies. Still, I didn't respond. I had nothing to say. I wasn't her rescue plan. A few days later, I got an envelope in the mail. No return address, just my name handwritten across the front. Inside was a printed page. A DNA test result. I don't know if she sent it or maybe one of her friends who felt bad. But there it was in black and white. The child was Jason's. 99.98% match. I stared at that number for a long time. Not because I was surprised, but because it was now real. It wasn't a hunch anymore. It was fact. All the times I thought maybe I was overthinking, maybe I was being paranoid, all of it gone. I wasn't the father. I sat with that thought for a while. It wasn't grief or loss or even anger. It was just final. Like the last puzzle piece snapped in. And then, something wild happened. I got a call from an old client, one of our biggest back at the family business. The guy who gave us our first big break years ago, when no one else would take a chance on us. He told me he tracked me down through a mutual connection and asked if I was still consulting. I said I was. He goes, good, because we pulled our contract from your dad's company. Too messy over there. But I liked working with you. You made things work. I want to move it all under your name, if you're interested. I almost dropped the phone. That contract was huge. It could be the foundation of something real. Not just freelance jobs and invoices, an actual business of my own. And just like that, something clicked in me. Maybe this whole thing didn't just blow up for nothing. Maybe it was supposed to happen. Maybe walking away was the first right move I'd made in a long time. I said yes. We scheduled a meeting. And now I'm building again. Slowly, carefully. Not for anyone else. Not for legacy or image or proving a point. Just for me. But here's the thing. That wasn't the last time I heard from Hannah. Last week she showed up. In person. Yeah, I know. Wild. I opened the door and there she was. Same tired eyes, holding the baby on her hip, standing like she wasn't sure what she was even doing there. She said, "Can I talk to you? Just for a minute?" I didn't answer. What did I do? Nothing. Just stood there, staring at her. She shifted the baby in her arms and gave me this look. The kind of look people give when they know they're not going to win, but they still want to try anyway. "Can I talk to you? Just for a minute?" she said. I stepped out, closed the door behind me. I leaned against the porch railing. "Then why are you here, Hannah?" She looked down at the baby, like he was going to give her the right words. "He doesn't have anyone else," she said finally. "Jason's gone, moved out of state, blocked me on everything. My job cut my hours. It's been hard, and I guess I just thought you should know that I've had time to think about everything." I didn't say anything. I wasn't going to make it easy for her. She could ramble if she wanted. I'd wait. She kept going. "You were right. About the test. About him. About all of it. I thought Jason was going to step up. But the second things got real, he bailed. I thought I was getting this exciting life. And instead, I got bills and silence." She looked up, tears already forming. "You were always solid. You showed up. I just didn't see it then." That's when I finally spoke. "Yeah, you didn't." And that was all I said for a minute. I let it sit. She wiped her face with her sleeve. "I'm not asking you for anything. I'm not expecting anything. I don't know. Maybe I just needed to see you. Maybe I needed you to see him." She tilted the baby toward me like that was supposed to mean something. I didn't move. He's your nephew, she added. I just shook my head slowly. He's Jason's son, and you made your choices. She looked down again. I've been rebuilding my life, I told her. You and Jason tore everything down. I didn't ask for that. I didn't deserve it. But I took it, and I built something better. She looked like she was about to say something else, but I cut her off. Not harsh, just direct. You showed up for closure, but I got mine a long time ago. Then I turned, opened the door, and went back inside. Didn't slam it, didn't lock it, just closed it and left her on the porch. She stood there for maybe another minute, probably hoping I'd change my mind. I didn't. Eventually, she walked back to her car and drove off. And that was that. It's been a few months since then. I haven't heard from her or Jason. No texts, no random pop-ups, nothing. The consulting gig I landed with that old client, it turned into something bigger. I now run my own small firm. Lean but tight. 5 people under me. Steady contracts, no dead weight. We do things by the book. We don't overpromise and we actually deliver. Clients like that. Turns out honesty and consistency still matter in this world. Funny thing? One of the drivers from my dad's company hit me up last week. Told me the old place is barely hanging on. Contracts dried up. My dad's health is shaky. Jason's name is poison in the industry now. He got a job at some warehouse out of town. Guess his charm wore off when people actually expected results. I didn't laugh. I didn't celebrate. I just nodded. That's karma. It's not loud. It doesn't show up with a warning. It just takes its time and hits where it hurts. Reputation, money, pride, and it always hits eventually. I never got revenge. Didn't destroy anyone. Didn't drag names through the mud. I just told the truth. I walked away, and I built a better life while they tried to piece together the one they shattered. Now I get up in the morning, make my own coffee, answer to no one. I don't flinch when my phone rings. I don't second-guess texts. I don't wonder what's being said behind my back. Peace is loud when you used to live with chaos. And honestly, the best revenge wasn't finding someone new, or flexing on social media, or proving anything to anybody. It was just being better. Better off. Better alone. Better than them. My dad gave the family company to my golden boy brother, and called me just labor. I resigned quietly. Weeks later, their biggest client offered me a director position. When the family business lost that contract, they called me begging for help. Hey, Reddit! My family business always acted like my brother was the crown prince, and I was the guy who carried his throne. So I finally said, nah, not doing that forever, and built something better for myself. But of course, they weren't done trying to pull me back. Before we get there, let me start from the beginning. Name's Dylan Pierce, 29, specialized field tech for my family's company. I work on heavy industrial machines, the kind where small misalignments cause big problems. And when I say family, I mean my parents and my older brother Grant, who somehow got crowned the future emperor of the place before he could even grow a full beard. I'm the guy who actually knows how to run the equipment, fix the machines, handle the on-site messes, and keep clients from calling in a panic. Grant's job is mostly pretending he invented business strategy while hiding behind a computer screen. Anyway, our shop's been around forever. My dad, Howard, started it before I was born, and he acts like the walls should bow whenever Grant walks by, because he has a degree. Meanwhile, I'm the one out there every day doing the part nobody else wants to learn. It's specialized work, hands-on, precision stuff that most people mess up even after months of training. But sure, Grant's the genius. So on this particular morning, I was wrapping up a big project for our biggest client. One of those jobs where if you don't know exactly what you're doing, you can wreck a pile of equipment and a month's worth of scheduling. But for me, it's just another Tuesday. Logan Brooks, the rep for the client, was standing there, watching as I nudged the alignment back where it should be and reset the sensor. When the machine came up smooth, no shudder, no warning lights, Logan finally exhaled. Man, Dylan, thank you, he said, shaking his head. I swear, every time this thing glitches, I just hope you're the one who shows up. I shrugged. Yeah, well, I like when things work instead of exploding. Keeps the day simple. He laughed, relieved. You could tell he appreciated that someone actually knew what they were doing. I packed up my tools, thinking for once the day might end without the usual nonsense. And then, right on schedule, Grant Pierce strolls in. Perfect timing, meaning everything difficult was already done. He walks like he's arriving for a Nobel Prize ceremony, not a job site he's never touched. Excellent, he said, clapping his hands once. My team executed my plan perfectly, exactly the outcome we projected. I just stared at him, because I didn't remember any plan except me fixing everything myself while he was probably indoors color-coding email folders. Logan looked over at him with this confused half-smile, like he was trying to place whether Grant was joking or just whatever he is. But Logan's professional, so he just nodded politely. Grant kept going, throwing out big words like he swallowed a thesaurus over breakfast. This is what streamlined coordination looks like. I'll relay the success metrics to upper management. Upper management. It's a family business. Upper management is literally our parents eating lunch at the same desk. I stayed quiet, leaning on my toolbox, watching my brother act like he masterminded something he couldn't physically perform, even with a printed instruction manual and subtitles. My favorite part was when he gestured at the equipment like he actually knew what half those parts did. When Logan turned back to me, his expression said everything. Confusion, embarrassment, a tiny bit of pity. But he didn't call Grant out. He's too respectful for that kind of drama. Grant eventually wandered off, probably to go tell our dad how his plan saved the day. I just sighed and wiped down the tools. Does he always do that? Logan asked quietly once Grant was out of earshot. Only when he's awake, I said. He can't lift a toolbox, but he's great at lifting credit. Real talent. Logan cracked up, but you could see him mentally filing the moment away. People notice more than you think. As I loaded up the truck, I caught myself thinking about how many times this same song and dance had played out over the years. I do the work, Grant takes the spotlight, and my parents nod along like he's some prodigy guiding the company through economic storms with the power of his vocabulary. I could feel something tightening in my chest. Not emotional, just that fed-up sense when you realize everyone around you is committed to pretending the sky is green. And I knew the conversation about the business's future was coming soon. It was like this heavy cloud hanging right above the shop, and no matter how many jobs I crushed or clients I kept loyal, I already knew how it was going to go. This chapter of my life was starting to feel worn out, and I was starting to wonder how much longer I'd let them keep me invisible. A couple days after the big job, my dad Howard tells me he wants to talk about the future. When he says that, it usually means I'm about to hear a speech, not have a conversation. We sit in the office, me in the cheap folding chair, him and Marianne in the nice ones. Perfect setup already. Howard clears his throat like he's about to read a proclamation. Dylan, your brother Grant will be taking over the business when I retire. No build-up, no discussion, just straight to it. Grant is sitting on the side, pretending he wasn't waiting for this moment since birth. He's leaning back, smirking like someone just announced he won an award he campaigned for behind the scenes. Howard keeps going. It makes sense. He's the oldest. He has the degree. He understands the structure and long-term viability of the company. Translation. He likes clipboards and big words. Marianne jumps in with the supportive wife voice she uses whenever she wants to shut down any disagreement without sounding mean. Your father has thought about this a long time, she says. This is the logical choice. Grant adds, it's really about strategy. You know, leading the company into the next phase. He says this with the confidence of someone who would forget which wrench to hand me if I asked. I let them talk. Once they finish congratulating themselves, I speak. I'm not asking to be the boss, I say. I'm asking for a stake, some ownership, a say in how things move forward. I'm the one out in the field keeping the work alive. You know that. Grant gives a fake sympathetic nod, like he's comforting a toddler. Dylan, you're great at the physical side, but ownership requires a different skill set. It's not personal. It's literally personal, I say. This is a family business. Howard leans forward. Your role is valuable, but Grant has the qualities needed to run things long term. You'll still have a job here. And after I'm gone, you'll get your share of money. You don't need to worry. That line hits me louder than anything else. After he's gone? So my entire future is basically, wait until your dad dies. Good to know. I keep my voice steady. So I'm not family enough for ownership, but I'm family enough to be told to be grateful? Howard frowns like I'm being unreasonable. Don't twist my words. I'm doing what's best for the business. You're overreacting, and that's when it clicks. They don't see me as someone who helped build this place. They see me as the guy who does the work they don't want to do. A pair of hands, not a partner. Grant finishes things off with one more arrogant line. You'll still be part of the team, Dylan, just in the right capacity. Right capacity, meaning the one that keeps him comfortable. I stand up. Then I guess I know where I stand. Acker? Howard says something about keeping things professional, but I stop listening. They made the decision long before this meeting. I was just there to be informed like an employee getting a schedule update. A few hours later, when I'm heading to my truck, Marianne walks out of the building like she'd been waiting for her moment. Dylan, honey, can we talk? I brace myself. Moms don't call you honey unless they're about to adjust your attitude. She steps closer, all gentle tone. I know today was hard. I want to understand what you're feeling. I nod, because sure, let's see where this goes. She sighs softly, hand on my arm. I think you're taking this too personally. Your father knows what he's doing. He's planning for everyone's best interest. There it is. Not even 2 sentences in, and I'm already the unreasonable one. I'm not taking it personally, I say. I just want to be valued the same way you value Grant. Her expression shifts into that calm but cutting mode she uses when she wants to set me straight. You're being dramatic. Your brother has qualities you don't, and that's okay. You should focus on your strengths and stop making this hard for us. For us. Not for you. Not for the business. For them. She keeps going. This isn't something you need to challenge. Just accept the role your father believes suits you. He's thought this through more than you have. She says it like she's giving me a life lesson, like she's the wise guide in a movie, except everything coming out of her mouth is dismissive in a soft wrapper. I let her finish. I don't interrupt. I don't argue. When she pauses, expecting some grateful reply, I just say, got it. She smiles like she fixed me. Good. I knew you'd understand. She walks away satisfied, and I stand there realizing this wasn't a conversation. It was damage control. Not for my sake. For theirs. They weren't listening. They weren't considering anything. They were managing me, filing me back into the box labeled, does the work, doesn't question decisions. And that's when the last bit of patience I had for the whole situation finally burned out. After the talk with my parents, something in me switched off. Not dramatic, just final. I walked into the shop the next morning, went straight to my dad's office, and handed him my 2 weeks' notice. I'm old school about paperwork. I keep hard copies of everything I sign, tucked in a battered folder behind the truck seat. No speech, no emotion, just, here, my last day will be this date. Howard looked up from his computer like I'd interrupted a historic negotiation instead of a crossword puzzle. 2 weeks? He said, eyebrows raised. You sure about this? Pretty sure, I said. He leaned back, acting thoughtful. Well, if this is about money, I can give you a small raise. A modest one. You've earned that. The number he offered was so low it almost made me laugh. It wasn't a raise. It was spare change with a bow on it. I'm good, I said. My decision's made. He shrugged like losing me was equivalent to losing a paperclip. All right, we'll manage. Yeah, I bet. Yeah. Word got to Grant within minutes, because he appeared in the doorway acting like someone had invited him to celebrate. So you're leaving, he said, arms crossed, smug in full force. Didn't see that coming. He absolutely saw that coming. I nodded. Yep. He clicked his tongue. Hope you've got a plan. The field isn't exactly overflowing with opportunities for your type of work. My type, I repeated. Right. He smirked, enjoying himself. Well, I'll take over the field operations until we find someone else. Shouldn't be too hard. I didn't bother responding. Grant taking over the field was like a cat taking over air traffic control. Then the games started. By lunch, I got a new schedule notification, courtesy of Grant, filled with nothing but pointless side jobs. Stuff nobody cares about. Stuff that doesn't matter. Stuff he normally pawns off on random temp workers. I noticed one glaring thing. None of my remaining assignments included Logan's site, which was funny because I'd been the lead on that account for years. I walked past Grant's desk on my way out. He pretended not to see me, tapping dramatically on his keyboard like he was managing a global crisis. The next day, same thing. Another schedule update. More busy work. More filler jobs. More attempts to keep me occupied in places where no one important would see me. I'd barely set foot on the main floor before I got called to fix a rusted-out secondary unit that hadn't been used since I was 19. After 2 hours of that nonsense, Grant appeared behind me with a clipboard. Good progress, he said, like he had any idea what he was looking at. Tomorrow, I need you to train our new hire. He's very green, so go slow. I turned around. New hire? Since when? Since today, he said. Dad and I agreed it was time to expand the team. You can show him the ropes before you head out. Translation, keep Dylan busy, give him zero interaction with the client, make him feel irrelevant before he leaves. I looked him in the eye. You want me to train someone in 1 week for a job that takes months to learn? Exactly, he said. Do your best. You know, be a team player. A team player. Coming from him. Good one. The newbie, Austin, was harmless. Nice enough, but clueless. He didn't know the equipment names, didn't know procedure, didn't know basic safety. The poor guy didn't even bring gloves. He showed up excited to learn, not realizing Grant threw him at me like a sandbag. I didn't take it out on him. He wasn't the problem. I taught him what I could without wasting both our time. Grant hovered a couple times, pretending to check in, but I could tell he was really just making sure I wasn't anywhere near a Logan project. The real kicker was when I overheard him telling another employee in the hallway, "We'll be fine once Dylan's gone. He's not essential." Never was. Just a field hand. He said it loud enough to make sure I heard it. Classic Grant. Quiet digs weren't enough. He needed an audience. I didn't stop or turn or react. I just walked past him and kept moving. But inside, I added another tally mark to the very full column labeled Reasons I'm Leaving. The rest of the week was the same. Pointless assignments, busy work, urgent tasks nobody cared about. Zero access to the big client. Grant reshuffling my day like a puzzle called How to Erase Dylan before he's even gone. By the fourth day, I didn't even check the schedule anymore. I just waited for whatever new attempt at sabotage Grant dreamed up that morning. I stayed professional, did the work, clocked in, clocked out. But my patience was on fumes, and Grant could tell, which probably made him feel powerful. That was fine. Let him enjoy it. A few more days and he wouldn't have me to micromanage anymore. When Friday hit, I sat in my truck for a moment before driving home, watching the shop through the windshield. One more week? Just one. I wasn't sad. I wasn't second-guessing anything. I was just tired of pettiness coming from people who were shocked I no longer wanted to break my back for them. Grant could keep playing king of the empty throne. I was already halfway gone. My last week rolled in with the same pattern. Grant piling nonsense on my schedule and me doing the work anyway because I'm not about to end my time there looking sloppy. If anything, I worked cleaner and sharper, just to make sure Grant couldn't spin anything when I was gone. Even with him trying to bury me under pointless tasks, I still needed to stop by one of the sites where Logan was checking on equipment. The only reason I got that assignment was because the newbie, Austin, didn't know which end of a tool to hold yet, and even Grant realized letting him handle expensive machinery would be a lawsuit waiting to bloom. When I walked in, Logan looked at me like he hadn't expected to see me at all. "Hey, you're actually here," he said. "Grant told me you were tied up on other stuff." "I magically became available," I said. He raised an eyebrow, catching the tone instantly, but not pushing. He just stepped aside so I could get to work. Even when I was technically on my way out, he treated me like the guy he trusted most on the job, because that's exactly what I'd been for years. While I checked the panel and reset one of the units, he stood nearby, arms crossed. "I gotta tell you something," he said, like it had been sitting with him a while. "We've been having issues with your brother lately." I didn't react, just waited for him to keep going. "It's been stuff like delays on paperwork, wrong forms, pricing that doesn't match what we talked about, scheduling getting messy, and he's not the easiest to deal with." He phrased it politely, but the meaning was obvious. Grant had been pulling his usual arrogance routine. Logan sighed. "Honestly, man, you're the reason this runs smooth. When you're here, things get done right." He rubbed his jaw. "I've been sending Victor the downtime reports. He's been asking what it would take to bring this in-house." I tightened one bolt and said nothing for a second. It wasn't that the compliment surprised me. It just wasn't something I ever heard from my own family, even though they relied on my work more than anyone. "Yeah," I finally said. "I try to keep things simple." "And we notice," Logan said. "A lot more than you think." I nodded and closed the panel. Inside, that comment hit harder than I expected. Not emotional, just confirming what I'd known for years. I was the one holding the fieldwork together. Everyone saw it except the people who should have valued it most. Later that afternoon, I stopped by the shop to drop off a form. As I walked past the office hallway, Grant's voice echoed from inside one of the rooms. He was on the phone, sounding authoritative the way he does when he wants to impress someone. "Dylan? He's just the labor guy," he said. "Not reliable long-term. We'll be better off once he's replaced." I stopped mid-step. Just the labor guy. Not reliable long-term. He said it like fact. Like it wasn't coming from the man who couldn't fix a jammed unit if you handed him instructions and a flashlight. He didn't know I was there and I didn't announce myself. I didn't jump in or start a fight. I just stood there for a moment, taking it in, letting it confirm what I already understood. That was who Grant was. Strip away the polished vocabulary, the leadership tone, the fake confidence. He needed me gone so he could pretend he was capable. I walked away without making a sound. When I stepped outside, I checked my phone and saw a forwarded message from another employee. It was a copy of a note Grant sent to a vendor. "Dylan won't be a major point of contact anymore. He's more temporary labor than lead tech." Temporary labor. After a decade keeping the whole place functioning. I didn't reply. I didn't confront him. I just filed it into the same folder in my mind, where I stored every quiet insult he'd tossed my way over the years. The next morning at the client site, Logan and I were finishing up another small fix when he said, "So you're really leaving, huh?" "Yeah," I said. "Just time for something else." He waited, maybe expecting a story, but I wasn't about to dump my family drama onto him. "No big reason," I added. "Just moving on." He looked at me for a moment, like he didn't fully buy the simplicity but respected the boundary. "Well, sucks for us," he finally said. "You've been the difference between a mess and a working system more times than I can count." "Appreciate it," I said. He didn't say anything else right away, just stood there with this thoughtful look, like gears were turning somewhere behind his eyes. Not in a dramatic way, just the expression of a guy putting together pieces he'd been noticing for a while. I wiped my hands on a rag, packed the tools, and headed out. As I walked toward my truck, I could feel it. The client side was paying attention more than my family ever did. They saw who did the work. They saw who kept things running. They saw who was actually worth something. And it was clear they weren't just going to shrug and say, "Good luck out there." There was something building, something shifting. I just didn't know yet how big. 2 days before my last shift, I got assigned to one more visit at the client's main facility. Probably another keep Dylan busy move from Grant. But joke's on him. This was one place he actually needed me, because nobody else on our team could fix half the stuff in that building without calling me every 10 minutes. I walked in, toolbox in hand, expecting to see Logan waiting like usual. Instead, standing beside him was Victor Hale, his boss. Victor's the kind of guy who doesn't waste motion or words. Calm face, sharp eyes, pressed shirt even on dusty sites. He nodded once when I approached. "Dylan," he said. "Good timing." Logan gave me a little smile that told me this wasn't a normal visit. Something was brewing. Victor didn't start with small talk. "We've been having issues with this unit," he said, pointing to one of the high-end machines. "Walk me through what's going wrong." No greeting, no warm-up. Straight to the exam. Fine by me. I crouched down and opened the panel. "This model overheats when the alignment drifts even a little," I said. "And whoever last worked on it, probably someone trying to impress my brother, tightened the housing wrong." I tapped the misaligned bracket. "This causes the internal sensor to read false pressure spikes." Victor watched without reacting, hands in pockets. Logan stood behind him like a referee trying not to influence the match. I loosened the housing, realigned the bracket, tightened it fast and clean. There. Sensor should read accurate now. If it doesn't, I'll recalibrate, but 9 times out of 10, this is the reason. And I hit the power. The machine hummed to life perfectly. Victor glanced at Logan. Logan nodded like, "See? This is what I was talking about." As I closed the panel, I added, "If Grant sent someone else for this, you'd probably have a 2-hour delay and an invoice blaming the manufacturer. So congratulations. You got the upgraded service package today." Logan snorted. Victor actually cracked a small smile. Not big, but enough to say he appreciated someone who didn't dance around the truth. He stepped closer. "You know your work," he said simply. "That's the idea," I replied. Victor didn't rush. He let the moment settle like he wanted to be absolutely certain before he spoke again. Then, "What would it take for you to run this in-house for us? No fluff, no flattery, just straight to the point." I wiped my hands on a rag. "Depends what you're offering." Victor raised an eyebrow. "Before I offer anything, I want your number. Your conditions." Most people would freeze at that question, start stuttering or lowball themselves. I didn't. I'd been undervalued for years. I knew exactly what I was worth, so I listed it clean. I'd want a 3-year contract, locked pay. I want to choose the equipment because I'm not using trash. I want 2 people under me that I hire myself. And if I'm running this department, I want the title and the responsibility, not a pretend one. Victor studied me. "And salary?" I told him the number. Not exaggerated, not timid, just honest value. Logan's eyes widened slightly, but in the good way, that he actually said it way. Victor didn't blink. He nodded, impressed. "Reasonable. More reasonable than I expected, actually." He glanced at the line humming. "Every hour that line stalls, we burn 6 figures. I have a standing budget to fix that. HR will paper the details. I want to know if you want the chair." "I'm not trying to be a billionaire," I said. "Just match the work." He crossed his arms. "Fair enough. Here's what I can offer you." Then he laid it out. A 3-year contract. Pay well above the industry high end. Full benefits. An office equipment budget under my control. 2 hires of my choosing, straight reporting line to him, no middle nonsense. It wasn't a job offer. It was a full blueprint for my own department. Logan looked excited, like he'd been waiting for this. Victor looked like a man who'd already decided but wanted to give me space to think. I took a breath. Not because I was overwhelmed, but because I wanted to answer the right way. I'll think about it, I said. Victor nodded once. Good. I don't want desperation. I want clarity. He wasn't testing me anymore. He was respecting me. We shook hands. Not over the deal, over the understanding that a deal could happen. As I walked out to my truck afterward, toolbox swinging at my side, I didn't feel shocked or confused. Just steady. I had options now. Real ones. Ones I earned. And even though I said I'd think about it, the truth was already settled in my chest. Yeah, I was taking it. I figured if I was going to take the job with Victor, I'd tell my family before anything was official. Not because they deserved the heads up, but because I'm not sneaky. I wanted it done clean, face to face. I picked the next morning to break the news. But the night before, Howard pulled me aside like he'd been waiting for his window. I was walking through the shop grabbing a tool case when he called out, "Dylan, got a minute?" His tone wasn't the usual clipped business-first tone. It was soft, careful, like he suddenly remembered how to sound like a dad. I turned. "What's up?" He stepped closer, folding his arms like he was about to deliver wisdom. "I know things have been tense, but you need to understand something." He paused, giving the speech some dramatic weight. Family comes first. There it was. Not an apology. A command wrapped in sentiment. I didn't answer, so he kept going. "You have to remember who gave you a job, who trained you, who made sure you always had a place here." His expression hardened. "Your brother needs you. This business needs you. Don't forget that because you're upset." I stood there, letting him talk, catching every line for what it was. Guilt, not understanding. Expectation, not respect. Control dressed up as care. Nothing changed. Not an inch. No acknowledgement of what I'd built. No ownership of how they dismissed me. Just I owe them indefinitely. Because family. "Anything else?" I asked when he finally stopped. Howard blinked, thrown by my tone. "No. I just wanted to say that before you do anything foolish." "Right," I said. "Good to know." I walked away before he could say more. Whatever I had left of "maybe they'll understand" evaporated right there on the concrete. The next morning, I went into the office early. Howard, Marianne, and Grant were already gathered, like someone sounded the family meeting alarm. Good. Saved me time. "I'm taking another job," I said. Direct. No room for misinterpretation. "I've got an offer from the Brooks account. I'm accepting it." The reaction was instant. Howard's face went red. "Absolutely not." Marianne gasped like I'd announced I was joining a biker gang. "Dylan, you can't do that. After everything we've done for you?" Grant just leaned back in the chair, that smug grin spreading. "You do realize you signed a non-compete, right?" There it was. He couldn't just let Dad yell. He had to add his own brand of manipulation. "No, I didn't," I said. "I checked my copies last night. Every agreement I've ever signed. Show me where it is then." "What?" Grant blinked. "The non-compete. Show it to me, right now." He froze. No folder, no document, no saved PDF. Nothing, because it didn't exist. I stepped closer. "You made it up, didn't you?" Grant's jaw tightened, trying to hold the lie together, but he had nothing. Silence did the job for him. Howard didn't miss a beat, though. "Regardless of paperwork, you owe loyalty to this family. You can't just leave because you feel overlooked." I laughed once. Short, humorless. "Overlooked? You told me the entire business goes to Grant because of tradition, and a college degree that doesn't even apply to what we do." Marianne tried soft-voiced guilt again. "Your father knows what's best. You shouldn't betray the family over something this emotional." Emotional. Right. I looked at all three of them, not angry, just done. "You want loyalty without giving any. You want my work, my time, my silence, but none of my say. And now that someone else sees value in me, suddenly you care. Interesting timing." Howard slammed a hand on the desk. "You're being disrespectful." "No," I said, steady. "I'm being clear." Grant finally snapped. "You're leaving us to fall apart. Selfish. Completely selfish." I turned to him. "The only person you care about is yourself, and you're terrified that when I'm gone, people will finally see what you actually bring to the field." His face twisted like he'd been punched, even though my tone never rose once. I grabbed my bag off the chair. "I'm done here." Marianne reached out like she wanted to pull me back with words alone. "Dylan, don't walk out in the middle of a discussion." "This wasn't a discussion," I said. "It never was." I walked out before any of them could throw another line at me. No yelling, no dramatic door slam. Just a quiet exit they couldn't control. And outside, standing beside my truck in the morning air, I pulled out my phone and called Victor. "Morning, Dylan," he answered. "I'm in," I said. "Good," Victor replied. "Legal already cleared conflicts. No non-solicit, no non-compete on your side. HR will send the packet today. Your pay starts now. No point paying you to sit in an empty room. I spent the first few mornings waking up and not immediately feeling annoyed. No toxic workflow from Grant. No family first lectures. No pretending the shop wasn't falling apart unless I held it together. Just silence, coffee, and actual breathing room. When people asked how the downtime felt, I just said, it's nice not being irritated before sunrise. Simple, but true. By the time the equipment finally arrived, I was more than ready to get moving again. Walking into the new building on my first official day felt different. Not overwhelming, not flashy, just normal, in a way I never got at the family business. Clean floors. Air conditioning that didn't sound like it was powering a jet. Assigned parking, so I wasn't circling the block, fighting delivery vans for space. The workspace Victor set aside for me was open and organized, not cramped and chaotic like the Pierce shop. And the office they gave me? Small but solid. Desk, storage, a door that actually closed. Even a mini fridge. I wasn't starstruck by it. I just looked around and thought, yeah, this is how a place that values people operates. No drama, no power games, no one acting like they're doing me a favor by letting me exist. Victor walked me through the final details. It's your department, he said. Build it how you want. Let me know what else you need. In the first week, I finalized the equipment order. Real gear. Not the bargain bin stuff my dad always bought because it's good enough. I picked out what worked, what lasted, and what would keep production moving without constant repairs. Next on the list, hiring 2 workers. I interviewed a small group. Victor told me to trust my instincts, so I did. I picked Raymond Soto, who'd been laid off from another company but knew his tools, and Corey Lane, younger but sharp and willing to learn without acting like he already knew everything. Within a few days, they were on payroll. I trained them the way a real leader should. Clear instructions, no ego, no treating them like pack mules. I showed them how the equipment worked, why certain alignments mattered, how to avoid the mistakes that eat up time. They picked it up fast, and within the month, the 3 of us were running the in-house setup smoothly. Every day felt straightforward. Work hard, solve problems, go home without carrying bitterness. Wild concept. I hadn't spoken to my family since the day I walked out. No announcement, no dramatic texts, no long paragraphs. I just didn't reach out, and they didn't either. It wasn't a grudge. It was peace. Something I hadn't had in a long time. About 3 weeks into my new job, Logan pulled me aside during a walkthrough. Thought you'd want to know, he said quietly. Right after you left, your dad and brother called Victor. Tried to talk him out of hiring you. I didn't even flinch. That sounded exactly like something they'd do. Fight to keep control only after realizing they lost it. How'd Victor respond? I asked. Logan smirked. He hung up. That was it. One clean motion, phone down, conversation over. I didn't say much, but inside, that confirmed every decision I'd made. I left a place that relied on manipulation and stepped into one that recognized competence. Later, I heard through my cousin Tessa that the Pierce business was downsizing. A couple smaller clients had closed their doors, and without the big one I now worked for, Howard had to lay off employees. Good people who didn't deserve the fallout. I felt bad for them. The rest? Not so much. Decisions have consequences, especially when you bet everything on the son who can't fix a jammed sensor. The week before, Tessa told me they had lost 2 more accounts. About 2 months into my new role, I got a call from an unknown number. I answered out of habit. Dylan, a familiar voice said. Howard. He spoke casually, like we hadn't ended things with a shouting match. Been thinking, he said. I want to offer you a partnership. I leaned back in my chair. Uh-huh. What kind? Well, he said, we could work out a small ownership percentage. You'd still report to Grant, of course. He'd handle decisions, but you'd have a stake. I think it's a fair compromise. So, nothing changed. A tiny scrap of ownership. No authority. Still under Grant. A partnership in name only. I almost laughed. Not angrily. Just out of disbelief that he thought this was tempting. Dad, I said calmly, you already picked your future. Stick with it. He didn't respond right away. Maybe he expected me to be grateful for leftovers. This is a serious offer, he finally said. So is my answer, I replied. I'm doing fine where I am. He tried one more line about family unity, but it rolled right past me. I ended the call politely and went back to work. That night, sitting in my office finishing paperwork, I thought about everything that led there. Not in a dramatic way, just connecting the dots. I didn't wreck anything. I didn't betray anyone. I didn't steal clients or scheme behind anyone's back. I just stopped accepting a role that kept me small. They chose how they treated me. I chose not to stay for it. Simple as that. A year later, the department I built is running better than I ever imagined. My team's solid, my name's on every project, and no one talks over me to take credit anymore. The Pierce business? Last I heard, they're barely keeping the lights on. Grant's still pretending it's a transition period, and my parents still act like they didn't choose this ending. I don't hate them. I just don't owe them anything. Turns out, peace isn't about winning. It's about finally walking away from people who only clap for themselves when you do the work. If you enjoyed this video, please hit that subscribe button. It really helps the channel and help us bring you more and better stories. Thanks.